if we're real about it, I could have someone drop 20 pounds in 2 weeks. It would not take a lot of work if we really narrow down the basics of how to drop someone weight. So that's not a real goal. That's not something that you want to work towards over 5 years. If I was still helping you try and lose 20 pounds in 5 years, I'm not doing my job, and you've probably not been putting the effort. So what do you actually want in 5 years' time? Do you want a pro card? Do you just want to have been on stage? Do you want to lift that 300 kilo deadlift? Do you want to run 5-10 kilometers for the first time? Do you want to run a marathon? What does your family look like in that time? What is your business, your career? What's your financial situation? What do these things all look like so that we have something to tangibly attach these goals towards, these outcomes, these values?
It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. All right, guys, we're back with another episode of Table Talk. My guest today is Ben Mayfield-Smith. Ben is the founder of Matter Athletica. Is that right? And you deal mostly with the mental aspect and the psychological aspect of prep conditioning, not just for bodybuilders, but for executive CEOs and pretty much anybody across the board. What's your origin story? Like, how did you get into this? So we're going to go way back.
Yeah, cool. So to go really far back with it, my origin was in playing rugby league as a kid. That was a big part of my life. It taught me a lot of traits, skills, abilities. That was kind of, the direction I want to take was I'm going to play rugby league professionally. That's like, Australia's big contact sport. That's our version of American football. And at the age of 21, I played right through high school. We played at a decent level. We won our state title, all the cool stuff we done there. And at the age of 21, where I was really trying to push that next contract, try and make it to the semi-professional level in Australia, I was hit by a car. And
so how many years do you have aspiring to that at that point?
So I started about 5 years old, and I was 21 when the accident happened. So 16 years. That was like my life was dedicated to this one thing. And for me, the accident was it was sudden, but it was life-changing. So at the time I was a tradesman. A big thing in Australia is you play rugby league, you're probably a tradesman. You've probably got a craft. It's a blue-collar sport. And so that was like, my life was done. I ended up with...
What was the trade?
So I was a carpenter. And with that, it was, hands-on tools every single day, working the heat, getting the labor done and being quite physical. And that led to, I lost... Basically, I was diagnosed with about a 7 to 10% spinal impairment. So that was kind of like this is it for you, you're done. In Australia, if you have a back injury, there's very little chance you're going to be a construction worker again. And for me, it was heading down this path. I went through court for 5 years and basically had 21 different specialists and doctors tell me this is broken, this won't work, you can't do this. Someone trying to say you'd fake it. It was a lot of court legal battles.
How did you feel during that time?
And that's where I think a lot of it really started for me was I went through a very heavy bout of clinical depression, suicidal tendencies. I was ready to throw in the towel. At the same time this was happening, my dad was also diagnosed with terminal cancer.
Well, how did your back feel during this whole time?
Oh, the back was broken. It was like, I went from very similar to you guys over here, a lot of power training, a lot of strength training, trying to build up to that sport. And they basically at every point had said, you're not doing this again. Like, you're not going to squat, bench, deadlift. You're not going to overhead press. You're not going to do anything. And that was, at the time, the injuries it backed up. And it was, those neurological pain, sciatic pain, low mobility, low range of motion, nothing could load through the spine. It was pretty much just wallow in self-pity.
All right. So the sport stopped and your training stopped, which would your social group stopped, right? So everything's stopping at that point in time, and that's for years?
Yep. So that was, I'd gone from playing 16 years straight to 4.5 years of don't go near it. And the only thing that kind of got me through it was I started coaching. So that was a big thing for me. I'd moved from playing the sport. At this point, I'd played every level I could get my hands on and try and improve on. And the next thing for me was like, if I can't play it, I want to be a part of it. This is what I know. This is what I do. And I would say I'd honed quite a decent craft of skill and knowledge in the game. And so I was like, I want to give back. And so I started coaching at a men's grade level, which for most first-time coaches you don't do. Usually it's junior levels and you work your way up. And I jumped straight in, got in front of this club, and I was like, look, I still want to be a part of it. And they were just like, cool, come in and play. I come in and coach, sorry. And that was the only experience I was able to sustain.
Okay.
And it was like, I couldn't train, I couldn't play, I couldn't be part of the actual field work, I couldn't be in the gym. I was just doing physio, rehab, I was doing yoga, stuff to try and fix my back. Or while listening to the specialist saying, hey, don't squat bench dead, don't do power training, don't do strength training. And so the only thing I got to do was coach.
Okay.
And that was, the thing that probably kept me earthside.
All right. So then you said your dad got sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even going through all of that on top of this, we add in at the age of 24, I was told, the family were told that dad had now reached a level of terminal diagnosis where all these treatments, these rarities that would possibly go into work, they just didn't take. And it was at a point where they'd asked me to try and be his final carer. Like, hey, you know what? You can't work. You got all these things going on. Can you take care of him and help out? So in all of this, the only thing I really got to do then that kept me focused was take care of my dad. And so I spent 2 years watching, the strongest man I knew at the time. He was also a laborer, tradesman, 95, 100 kilo man that just every story was, I played this sport, I played that sport, I was elite. And you just watch him wither away and the bodies began to break. But he would still show up every single week. We're going to chemo. He's sitting there through it. He's in the chemo chair. I'm going to do it. I'm going to take it. To give an example, the amount of poison that went through his body, the average dose of chemo, it's like 1,000 times the level of radiation is acceptable. Basically, it shuts down your system. The clinical trial they put him through was 10,000 times the exposure of radiation that's acceptable for the human body. The intent was to basically shut down his system and start it back up. They said, you can try this or you don't, you'll die no matter what. Let's see if this works. It's a last, Hail Mary, we're throwing the pitch. And he just said, I want to do it. He's like, I don't want to go yet. I'm not done. And to me, that was, I'm as an athlete, as a coach, as someone who's got their own problems, I was at this point where I can't complain about having a back problem. He's got a level of cancer that is going to put him in the grave, and he's willing to take this pain and suffering to try and work through it. And so, that's where the origin, I guess, of me trying to figure out mental approaches to people really started to shine through. As like, I was a big Jordan fan, Tiger Woods fan, all these elite athletes in Australia and America that top-notch players and athletes. But then the average person, my dad, could say, I'm not done. I've got, 5 years now of being in cancer battles and in and out of hospitals. Life was stripped away from him. And they're going to say, we're going to hit you with 10,000 times the level of radiation. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. I'm not done. And that was like my first where I'm like, I need to understand people.
And then what did that look like? I mean, so when you were caring for him, how much time did that actually take?
So I was his carer for about 2.5 years.
Okay.
And it wasn't physically intensive, but it was basically, I had to put all of my stuff on hold. It was like, he becomes priority. It was at a point where if he nicked himself shaving, his body didn't have the physical platelets to actually stop that from bleeding. So, little things like shaving, doing yard work, property management, it would kill him. If he got nicked by something, bitten by something, fell off something, that it would just bleed out and die. The infection would spread or sickness would spread and it would just shut him down. So it was more like I had to be there to guide him through that and kind of, take off whatever load I could, make sure he was taken care of, didn't have to do much. He took care of everything around the house so that he could just sit down. And as much as he hated it, because, he was a typical blue collar dad, like he did the work. But it was, that at the time, my thing was nowhere near as bad as his. And I was like, I got to step up and do it.
So what were your initial steps of trying to figure out why these people were the way that they are?
The crazy thing to me was starting to understand separating factors. At the baseline, whether it be general people, whether it be elite athletes, you look at, say, Jordan, you look at basketball teams, you look at bodybuilders, whatever it is, at the elite level, most of the skills are the same. The guys are pretty good at what they do, and they all have that, that 99th percent, ability and skill. And that's where I started to realize when it came to coaching, I really started to explore understanding people, was that they all have the same give or take abilities. They all have the same skill sets roughly, but there was something that separated them. And usually it was their mental approach to failure, their mental approach to adversity, getting back up. How can they get that leg up over the next athlete? And there was these consistent traits in those higher level people that were different to everyone else. You listen to Kobe's story. He lost a game. He was in the local high school shed gymnasium, and he was practicing till 5 a.m. the day after a final, and they lost. His team were out drinking. So they're all elite athletes. They're all elite people themselves. And Kobe separated himself by, what, we just lost. I'm not partying. I'm going to train. Jordan, I miss how many thousands of shots, but I land these shots, and that's why I'm the best. You look at Tiger Woods and how many shots he makes, but when he misses them, he's practicing. He's making up for it. He's getting back up and going, that's the shot that happened. Cool. Let's move on. That ability to overcome the adversity, the setback, the obstacle is one of the biggest separators that I've seen. And even at the level of elite athletes, it makes them better. So for me, I was like, there's got to be something here that can be taught. There's got to be something here that the average person can learn from. And that's where we started to set up our system in coaching was, if the average person can learn these abilities, suddenly a bad day at the office, or, I cheated on my diet, or, me and my wife had a fight, isn't this huge adversity that it's made out to be. And we can overcome those things and get better. And that's, the probably the biggest thing that I really started to learn about people.
Would you say that those people that you're speaking about hate to lose more than they like to win? Or is that too generalized?
No, I think it's a combination of both. So the really, really good people absolutely despise losing, but there is a passionate obsession with winning. You can have one or the other. Like I've worked with athletes that have one or the other. I've worked with executives that have one or the other. And in and of itself, they're both motivators. But there's literature that we can see psychologically that when a rat is put in a tube, and there's this really exciting study on how to motivate a rat. They put cheese in front of the rat. That was synonymous with winning. They put the cheese in front of the rat, trying to obtain that thing. There was a degree of pressure that they would apply to try and break free from this trap. They put a cat behind the rat. There was a certain degree of pressure that it would apply to get away from the cat. Sorry. When you put them both in the same tube, they're getting away from the cat and they're working towards the cheese. Then all of a sudden it was tenfold better. So you combine those two factors, and it's a recipe for succeeding.
All right. So over a period of time, this has kind of laid out your pillars of your philosophy, for lack of a better word, which would be resilience, fulfillment, passion development, community, and purpose. Mm-hmm. And I guess psychological aspect, right? So if we're just to kind of go through each one of these, first off, are they laid out in any type of hierarchy?
No, I wouldn't say they're laid out in a hierarchy, more so an understanding that they need to exist. So, we have, even in those aspects, we have 3 key values that we built the company on. And they were things that I'd established that even in my training career and playing career kind of laid out the foundations of what little success I did get. And that was purpose, consistency, intensity. And when we look at those things, it's almost impossible to succeed without them in any aspect. Like I wouldn't individualize them and say this one was more important than the next one. It was that if you really wanted to go somewhere, these things had to be present. And I guess even our pillars, the way we separate ourselves in coaching is like how many people have nutrition and training. It's a very common approach. Like when you get a coach, it's like, here's your program, here's your nutrition, which is, it works. That's, you can get those A-type athletes that'll be like, we're just hooked in. We're doing what you say. But one of the things that we found that really separated us was on top of that pillar, and we call it kind of like our triad or our pyramid, was psychology. So getting individuals, getting athletes, getting people to maximize the psychology of themselves as an individual only emphasize and improve their training and their nutrition, or their sport, their performance and their nutrition. And that was a factor for me after years of training and coaching, where when I really started to get results, and I really started to get people on stage, I really started to get people to succeed and achieve their end goal, was when we accommodated and considered for psychology as a key aspect of the approach. That was like, as I guess an umbrella term, all those factors fall into psychology at the top of that pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said before, how many people get the training down pat because they're just an athlete, they know to train, or they get their nutrition because their coach gave them a diet. For us, like, what about those people who aren't quite there, who aren't that, I guarantee if I gave you a program, you're going balls to the walls to smash that out of the park. But that's like, you as an individual, that's who you are. Not everyone is our way inclined as athletes or trainers. So how do we get that out of them, and how do we understand them better and be able to raise the bar of the average person? Not everyone's going to be Michael Jordan,
mm-hmm.
but how do I get them to think like Michael, to be at least a little bit better?
So if you're looking at the psychological aspect, and then with any aspect of coaching or working with anybody, you have to have some kind of anchor,
mm-hmm.
To kind of make sure that you're both on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
Say we're talking about training to failure.
Mm-hmm.
Your definition and my definition may be completely different things on an RPE scale, unless we kind of anchor that. So with the psychology, that anchor, how do you establish the anchor? I would assume that anchor would have to be some type of core values, and figuring out what the core values are. So how do you help? Is that would be where your philosophy is that the anchor is going to fall within their core values?
Yeah. So a big one of that is, I never try to give the client the goal. A big thing for us is they come to us with a goal in mind, and we explore that. We use as many tools and resources as possible to make sure that goal is their goal, that they've had that conversation, we've explored it, and we know for a fact this is what they want. And then we anchor that, as you said, to their values. The best results we've gotten is when we can get someone to align the values of them as a person in their personal life, their training life, their work life, basically the top 3 to 5 values that define them as people. And how do we align their goals with that? And when we can do that, their goals become more real and become more anchored and emotionally attached to who they are. And they're all, they're often different to people. There's no common theme of values, but if we can connect that person's goals to their values, we lay out those values first, I guess, as a hierarchy approach, a top-down approach. It makes it more connected to them and allows them to bring out a deeper emotional motivation that they want to achieve it, because now it's aligned with who they are.
Yeah. It's
not me telling them for them, hey, what, I want you to get on stage. I don't care if you get on stage. I don't care if you get to 3% body fat. But if you tell me you want to, and you tell me that your values are X, Y, Z, and this aligns with who you are, it becomes so much more real.
Well, something that you said that was interesting, and I made a note here, which should be obvious, right, is the values are always going to come before the goals. But if you're working with somebody,
mm-hmm.
you don't know what their values are, right? So
mm-hmm.
when you're exploring the goal,
mm-hmm.
then you said something that was extremely important, is you explore what that goal actually is,
mm-hmm.
because what they physically are saying their goal is may not actually be what the real goal is. So what does that look like, and what is that process?
So a big thing for us that, again, this is where that psychology really amplified my skill as a coach and changed our system, was understanding a lot of what people say is societal pressures, family expectations, beliefs that they think they have that aren't truly theirs. And they'll come to us, and I guarantee, majority of, whether they're starting out strength coaches or they're, successful strength coaches, physique coaches that will be listening to this, have all had that person come and say, I want to lose 10 pounds. And the majority of the time, the goal is never that they want to lose 10 pounds. It's always something more along the lines of that 10 pounds reminds them of when they were in high school, they fit that dress, they were younger, they felt more connected to their husband or their partner. So a big thing for us was, okay, we need to lay this out. We need to put a system to this where we can explore what that actual goal is. And so we actually started from a more global view. So I want to know where you want to go in the next 5 years, but I want to know what that perfect 5 years looks like. And this is going to include, a big thing for us is including their personal life, their professional life, and their physique. So for me, straight off the bat, if I get you on stage and you win a trophy, or you get to win a medal, you get a pro card, but you're now on the street begging people for money, or you've lost your relationship, you lost your job, I have failed as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't have you throwing away your life to achieve a goal that's, we can do 6 months later. And a lot of the time that's where people struggle is straight off the bat. We're willing to throw all these things away because we think we want to have this goal. But even simpler than that, we just say, we narrow it down and go, all right, what does 5 years look like? What is the perfect 5 years for you? Well, I want you to write down in 5 years' time what a perfect life for you would look like and how that would feel, how that would smell, how that would look, so that we have a clear, tangible point of reference that I know that if we're not working in this direction, in those 3 areas, we're off track and I'm failing you. And then from that, I go, okay, in that 5 years now, what does the worst 5 years look like? If I were to give you, if the absolute hell on earth came to life for you in 5 years' time, what would that look like? Because now we have that towards approach and we have that thing we're working away from. And when you get someone to sit with that, suddenly that I want to lose 20 pounds is way more real. And it's something much deeper. It's much more philosophical. It's much more emotional. It's at a deeper level of who they are, because they are now in control of telling me what is the thing that you actually want. Because if we're real about it, I could have someone drop 20 pounds in 2 weeks. It would not take a lot of work if we really narrow down the basics of how to drop someone weight. So that's not a real goal. That's not something that you want to work towards over 5 years. If I was still helping you try and lose 20 pounds in 5 years, I'm not doing my job and you've probably not been putting the effort. So what do you actually want in 5 years' time? Do you want a pro card? Do you just want to have been on stage? Do you want to lift that 300 kilo deadlift? Do you want to run 5-10 kilometers for the first time? Do you want to run a marathon? What does your family look like in that time? What is your business, your career? What's your financial situation? What do these things all look like so that we have something to tangibly attach these goals towards, these outcomes, these values, and then we're working towards them?
How far will you peel that down? Because if we use the pro card as an example, like I want to get my pro card in 5 years. Okay, cool. I would see that as a benchmark, because the follow-up question would be, why do you want the pro card?
Yep.
Right. And then they're going to give you whatever answer that is. Then there's a, why do you want that?
Yep.
And basically you can peel it all down to pretty much the same thing,
Yep.
A better state of well-being.
Yep.
But in some cases now you're peeling it down so far that it's the same with pretty much everybody that lives.
Yep.
So how far will you peel that down? Because a lot of these things would be what I would call benchmarks.
Yeah. I call them checkpoints.
Yeah.
Exact. A very good example there is what you gave. So we will then deconstruct it and we'll go through like a decompartmentalization. So I'll have them write the 5-year goal, because usually it's huge, right? Like,
well, first off, real quick with that 5 years, because I've known some people that will do the same thing with different practices, if it's business or whatever it is. And they've all had to now condense it to 3 because 5 years has become too far for people to actually conceptualize.
Yep.
So have you found that to be the case, or does 5 years still work?
Now, 5 years still works quite well, because what ironically happens is a lot of time you give someone, let's say a Gen Pop client, or they want to compete for the first time. They're like, hey, what does that look like? Like, what does your goal look like in 5 years? They're basing that perception on the current work ethic that they put in. And so a lot of the time that view, that goal seems so far away because they've never fully committed themselves to something. They've never given their absolute all to that outcome and dedicated 5 years of their life towards one thing. What I find is, and very frequently find, once I get that person to buy in like that 5-year goal is 12 months or 2 years. It's now tangible. It's real. It's something that can be achieved, and they're actually working on it because they see, 2 years ago when I tried this, I was drinking on the weekends. I was going out and partying. I was kind of training, but it was a 5 RPE or it was a 4 RAR. Like, I was not really going to train. I didn't have intent in what I did. There was no consistency in my approach. So now we get them to buy in. They're into the Matter values. They're into our approach with training. And now it's like, if I actually just narrowed my focus and just did this one thing, well, now that's 2 years work. It's not 5 years. So the 5 years more becomes like a honed in, I guess, focal point where we can then deconstruct it and go, okay, well, let's break it down. So from 5 years, we go 3 years, 12 months, 6 months, 3 months. Now, each time the dial's going to move a little bit. It's probably going to get more extreme. They're probably going to get a little bit better, more advanced or further along. But in that process, we're able to deconstruct and make real what seems like an almost impossible outcome. So 5 years, even if it's pro card is a very hard goal to set, right? We know that bodybuilding is a very subjective sport. It's not, I lifted more weight than you in this total, like you guys go through with powerlifting. So it's hard to quantify that as being a goal. But if it is, what does that journey look like? Well, we know we have to at least get into doing state shows. We need to get into doing a national show. We need to get you training for a reason in the gym, building the skill and process of training, of learning failure, of being adhering to your nutrition, your macros, your calories, your diet, taking all the supplementation you take. Okay, so if that's the case, yeah, if we say 5 years, that's going to sound crazy because that person's never done it. But if we
they kind of have in not in the sense, and this is one of the things that I find with just people in general, you know, across the board with whatever they're kind of striving for, is they'll see that as a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple different ways that I can present that. The one would be for almost every case, they graduated from school.
Mm-hmm.
That was 12 years,
mm-hmm.
right? And a lot of times you have middle school, which was 4 years,
mm-hmm.
right? So they have the capabilities already for consistency because they had to show up to class. They
Absolutely.
have the capabilities to be ready because they have to have a pencil, paper, or whatever it's going to be. So all those things are kind of in there. And so that already shows that they have the skills.
Yes.
You know, because they're already utilizing them in other areas of their life, just not this one area. And then the other one I would throw out there is we are in 2024 now. So 4 years ago, there was a pandemic, which
mm-hmm.
seems like it was yesterday,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
That was 4 years, right? That when you look back, it was like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So looking forward or looking backward, it's still kind of there, but the trick is to connect it.
Yes.
So they see that.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So it sounds like that's what you're trying to do through this process, is to connect it to that.
Yes.
You know, so they're familiar with it,
mm-hmm.
because it doesn't matter if we want to explore something that we've never done before, mm-hmm. ever,
mm-hmm.
fly fishing or some shit,
Yep.
you know, and somebody's going to sit there and say, well, it's going to take you 4 years to become good at it. Our brain is going to operate the same way the person's brain. I've spent most of my life training in unconditioned gyms, and I know most of you that are training in garage gyms, private gyms, black iron gyms, know what I'm talking about when I say the heat sucks. It kills your motivation to go to the gym, it kills your performance, but it doesn't have to if you keep your electrolytes up. That's why today's episode is sponsored by Element. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink with everything you need and nothing you don't. This means lots of salt with none of the junk. No sugar, no colors, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, no BS. It contains an electrolyte ratio of 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. Element can help prevent and eliminate headaches, muscle cramps, fatigue, brain fog, sleeplessness, and other common symptoms associated with electrolyte deficiency. Right now, Element is offering a free sample pack with any drink mix purchase. Get yours at drinkelement.com. This deal is only available through the Table Talk link. Are you looking to boost recovery, enhance your sex drive, and improve performance in the gym? Do you think your hormones are out of whack and you're tired of getting the runaround from your doctor? You know, things like your hormones are just fine, stop lifting heavy weights, etc., etc., etc. I know what that feels like, as I've been down that road most of my life. This is why we've partnered with Marek Health. Marek Health is a premium telehealth platform that specializes in hormone optimization and preventative medicine, ensuring a better quality of life. Marek Health offers a Table Talk panel tailored for our listeners, featuring comprehensive tests like total and free testosterone, sensitive estradiol, and advanced markers like lipoprotein A and IGF-1. These comprehensive panels of up to 84 carefully selected biomarkers allow you to identify areas of enhancement and maximize your physical, cognitive, and sexual performance. It's much different than the panels you may get from your doctor. Choose between self-service options where you can select lab panels based upon decades of experience, or opt for guided optimization with your own health coach. Start with a detailed breakdown of your labs and receive personalized treatment options, both over-the-counter and prescription. Visit marekhealth.com/tabletalk and use the code TABLETALK to get 10% off your first order. Marek Health isn't just about better health, it's about empowering you to take control of your well-being. going to operate. Like,
Yeah.
the fuck you mean 4 years? I don't want to take 4 years to be able to
Yeah.
do this. You know, it's forever, you know? And so then as you're dialing it back, well, how important is this?
Yeah.
You know, da-da-da-da. So that sounds like that's kind of the process that you're going through with that.
Yep.
So once you're able to diagnose or figure out what the overreaching goal is, where I've never really liked the word goal, by the way. I like objectives. Because goals can be limiting.
Yes.
Because if I want a 300-pound bench, what if I could have done 320?
Yeah.
Well, it's whatever.
Yeah.
But it's just logistics or terminology. But the benchmarks of goals can be deceiving, because maybe they want the pro card, but in all reality, they may never ever get it. It's just the benchmark.
Yes.
So it's not really the goal.
Yeah.
You know, it should be something other than that.
Just to even touch on that, because like that's a fantastic point. One of my favorite things, and this is a key component to how I coach bodybuilding, is what if you never get the pro card, but who do you become along the way of approaching it? And that is such a powerful thing that I find bodybuilding doesn't get credit for, in that, in the same way powerlifting doesn't get credit for, but in the pursuit of something so big and so focused and narrowed down and isolated, what you learn about yourself along the way, who you become along the way, how is that in and of itself not a success? It's not a reward. If you do it for the right reasons, the pro card almost becomes a secondary or tertiary goal. It might not even be the primary focus, but what you've learned along the way is you've built delayed gratification. You have a system of nutrition and health. You have a system of training physically for the rest of your life. You've understood the necessity of relationships and social circles, building the right circles around you that support you. You now know what it's like to give everything to a single cause. You can go do that with now anything in life. You can take that to business, to study, to your career, to your relationships. It's something in all the sports that I've played back home in Australia. Bodybuilding is the one thing that I've really learned could do that for me. And I almost guarantee it'll be the same way for powerlifters. It's something that, you didn't get the pro card. It's unfortunate. Perhaps you just didn't have the genetics for it. There is a component where genetics adds up, where your ability to tolerate supplementation adds up. So worst case scenario, you don't get it. But the byproduct of being an athlete like that, you are a better person objectively.
Well, I believe that to be empirically true for one reason. And the one reason is anybody that has, a big goal like that, then they actually achieve that goal. That goal is fleeting. Right? Their satisfaction from that goal doesn't last very long, right? And then it leads right back into the next one, because what I don't think that they've actually realized is that was never the goal in the first place.
Yes.
The goal in the first place is the process, and the skill acquisition that you're learning along that way, with that, which is kind of fucked up when you really think it all through, because those same people will be the ones that will have the identity issues when it's taken away from them for whatever reason. And because they've now attached that to actually being what that objective was, when they've already kind of proven to themselves that was never the objective, just because of how they felt after they finally achieved it, which is interesting to sit there and just mind game yourself with, right? Because it's just round and around.
Even just on that very topic, like that is something that I went through in the loss of the sport I was playing. I had my car accident when I hurt my back, and they said, this is it. I was seeing a psychiatrist and a psychologist at the time because it was court mandated to kind of prove, how severe things were. And I was going through a period of grief, not because of my dad, but it was because everything that I had literally dedicated my entire life to achieving, it was taken away in an instant. And the identity of who I was as a person, the focuses in my life, the relationships I had at the time, the passions and the pursuits that I had was to this outcome that now it will never happen. Even if it didn't happen at the time, it was in my head, it was still something that was possible, right? Like it was something I could work towards, and I might have got to 30 or 40 and it never panned out, but it was always a could be. And that was always something to guide me and train towards, like life till 30 is about this. And at 21, that's no more. That will never happen. It doesn't matter what you do or how you come back from this. You will never do this now. And that was an experience of a grief that I couldn't even explain. Like I was genuinely grieving this loss of now what I'd learned after, ironically studying these fields and these topics, was my identity. It was who I was as a person was now gone. I had to try and figure out who I was beneath that goal. As you said, the goal wasn't so much to get a contract to the professional level. It was, I'm just someone who is innately drawn to growing, training, improving, self-development, physical development, pushing my limits and finding what I'm capable of. That can be done in any aspect or field. But as you said, some people get that pro card or they don't get that pro card. And then that's their identity gone. Their whole thing is caught up in, I have to be a pro athlete or I have to be a pro bodybuilder. It's like, okay, but very few people actually get that. Very few people actually reach that outcome. Very few people actually achieve that signature on the card. So who are you as a person if you don't get that? Are you a worse person? Are you a better person? Because to me, subjectively and objectively, that sport pursuit should make you a better person, regardless of where you end up, regardless of the contract you receive, regardless of winning that pro card or going to the pro level in any field. The endeavor, by and large, should make you a better individual or athlete, or just a better person from the skills, the traits, and the things that you have learned inside that pursuit. And that's what I think makes bodybuilding so powerful when it's done for that reason beyond, I just want a pro card. Like you said, we strip it back. Most people, the goal isn't the pro card. It's perhaps they've never had a direction in their life. They've never had a connection with people. They've never had a focus where they've wanted to achieve something. They've never understood sacrificing their entire being for something more. And so they give it all to bodybuilding. They give it all to powerlifting. They give it all to American football. Okay, but beneath that, you are someone better than just, I want to be an athlete.
Yeah. So once you're able to get them on the same page there, which easier said than done. Once you're able to get them on the same page, and then you're going to look at help them to know what their values are. So what process do you use to unpack that? So
when we approach psychology, there's a lot of different schools of thought, I guess, as to how you approach things. It's very similar to training where people are like, I'm a GVT camp. I follow Mike Metzer and I'm doing low volume but high intensity. I'm following the high volume bodybuilding guys. Like, there's always these different schools of thought or approach. And one of the things that I really am drawn to is what we call an existential school of thought. And one of the actions that I'll take, one of the conversations I'll have is, I'll sit them down, usually have a conversation when we start, when we're getting going, I have them fill it out. I'm like, when you fill out your values, I want you to think about the day that you die, the day that your family is together and everyone is discussing you at your funeral. What are the 3 words that you would that would define your life, said to you by your family or talked about by your family, by your friends? What would be written on your tombstone? That would, if anyone else came back and looked at you in 100 years' time and said, this person was here, these 3 words define them. And a lot of the time that gets rid of all the bullshit, gets rid of a lot of fluff. And at the crux of people like, oh, these things. And they'll connect that with, it's because of that raw emotional power of it, they're actually sitting and thinking at a deeper level than just, oh, I'm someone who's friendly and I'm cheery and I like to hang out with my friends. Like, that's not values. Give me the real answer. Like, how would you like your life to be defined the day you die and everyone gathers around you? And with that conversation, the amount of people that, oh, actually, I need more than a week. Like, usually with our onboarding process, we've had the conversation. I will send them the spreadsheet. I'm like, I want this back from you. And a lot of the time it's like, I can't do this in a week. I'm like, cool, send me something so I know that you're actually working on it, but I want you to review this. And the reason why the values are so important from that approach when we list that out is if someone starts to deviate, if someone starts to fluctuate, or I'm really trying to teach them something and, maybe they've had a mess up on the weekend, or maybe they've made a few mistakes in their week. They're not 100% focused. I will, instead of chastising and ripping into them, make them feel worse, I'm going to sit them down, whether it's a phone call, a message, text, whatever, an email. Usually we send check-ins via Loom. There's a lot of coaching practice now. I'll say, okay, what you told me at the start of all of this was you want to be here and we're here and you want to work on these things. Go back and review your values. Go back and review those 3 words that you said are going to be written on your tombstone and tell me, are the actions that you're engaging in aligned with those values?
How long does it take the average person to come up with what those 3 words are?
They'll give me something in a week, usually 2 weeks, but they'll be reevaluated because what they think they've written, what they think they're about, what they think they want. I have this kind of belief if you put 20 men, a football team, there's 11 players on an NFL field, there's 13 players on a rugby league field. If I put you guys all in a group and I asked you inside that group what your goal is, what are your values, what do you want to do? Usually it's a very superficial goal. You're like, I want to win the championship or I want to win the grand final. But then you take them out of that group setting, you isolate them and say that same thing. Tell me what it is you want out of life before you die. What is left behind? What have you achieved? And they'll have a much deeper emotional goal. There's something deeper that they want. And so it's that same sort of process. When I first have the conversation and we're trying to break down those walls, we're having those powerful conversations and I'm using these tools and strategies, I'll get something. I'm like, okay, I need you to go write that on paper. And I'll send it back. Yeah, I want to get on stage. Cool. There's something more there than that. Take some time and really think about this. And I want you to take time to actually sit and think about what your values are as a person. Because you ask most men, most athletes, besides the contract or the NFL or, the NBA, most of them have never actually been asked what they truly want in life. Usually someone's told them, society's told them, there's pressures that have told them. They might say they want a contract, but how many kids in America are brought up by their parents to really drill home, like, you're playing football. You're in that camp now. This is what you're doing because that's going to help you get out of poverty or it's going to get you a scholarship, which is cool. That's great. But what do you actually want? No one's really sat down with a lot of people and had that conversation. So when we have that, that's what I try to give them in that context. What is it if everything went well? What do you want that to be? And then, they'll get something back, which is great. It's a start. I'm like, okay, there's deeper here. This is a layer, but we can add another. So I'm like, take some time, go away for a couple of weeks, keep working on it. We're going to keep working in the process. I'm teaching you skills. I'm teaching you habits. Like, I'm not rushing to prep people. I take the time to build the necessary skills, lifestyle factors, habits, systems that the prep is successful. So take some time while we're already working on these things. And in the next 2 weeks, I want you to come back with something even bigger. I want to come something real. And usually in that time frame, if they haven't got something the first time, there is a much deeper goal the second time around where they're almost in tears having that conversation.
Well, what's interesting to me is, shit, now it's probably been over 20 years ago. I had a business consultant I was working with, and they were associated with the E-Myth going way back. And it was a 4-year process. But one of the first activities that I had to do was to define a primary aim. Mm-hmm. Right? Yes. Which is kind of the same thing that you're talking about with the tombstone and all that. And it was hard. Yep. Right. It ended up taking 4 months, to be completely honest, but because it would change, because, it's like, what do you live for? Like, fuck, I don't know, it's all over the place to be able to figure that out. And then after a certain point in time of just this endless loop of things changing all the time, of not really knowing of what a company's primary aim would be, which at the time it's mine because it was just me, right? Yep. But it also had to apply to if it was more than just me, right? And then she asked me to compile a list of my values, right? And I'm like, well, what the fuck, right? Yep. And the way that I was navigated through that was to think back and write down 5 to 10 people throughout the course of my life that have made a statement at some point in time, like defining moments. At one point in time, my mom was late picking me up from wrestling practice, and I'm never a fish. I was getting beat all the time. I'm just running the stairs over and over and over and over because she was late. The coach came by, and at probably 45 minutes, the coach comes by and asks me what I'm doing. I'm like, I'm tired of fucking losing, so I'm just going to keep doing this. He says, if you keep training harder than everybody else, you'll never lose. And that resonated. And I know his name and I know the statement. I can remember it vividly to this day. So Bill Mullen, there was a statement. So through the course of, and it could be a cartoon, it could be a book character or a person, a movie character, whatever it was. So I have this list, of 10, people with whatever they said. And then the opposite of that was think of 10 instances that happened in my life that pissed me off. Yep. That was really hard to get over. Yeah. Right. And then do a Google search for core values and assign a core value to it. And then from there were the similarities between all that. And then it was like, bam, there it is. Right. Because, our core values are developed, as we age, and maybe you can create new ones, but it's easier to lean into the ones that you already have. Yeah. And what that ended up being was actually pretty cool because, it ended up being live, learn, pass on, but the core values are a little bit deeper than what that is. But anytime I've had to make any decision in my life and I'm not sure where to go, all I have to do is to look at that list and the answer is right there. right? It's either a violation, and these work on, they're not absolutes. They all work on standard deviations. You're going to fuck up plus or minus, as long as you know what the home base is from that. But then once that was done, then we wrote, where do you want this business to be in 5 years? Right. And then it's basically the same, all the same things that you're saying right here. And then out of that statement, or 3 paragraphs, we would go through there and we would highlight anything that was quantifiable. Like customer service should be this. I have no customer service. It's just me. I don't know how to rank it. So we just ranked it on a scale of 1 to 5. And then those became key strategic indicators. That kind of build out and
this
grow
defines
the business.
our
So
business.
it just defines the whole, which those indicators would define somebody's progress. Are they moving toward or away from their goal based upon what that 5-year plan is?
Literally what you just described there is a skill that I teach my clients, whether it be my Gen Pop clients, my athlete clients, my executive clients, and it's called a choice point. And again, the big activity first is finding your goals and finding your values. The reason why it's called a choice point is that every single decision we make as an athlete, as an individual, as a bodybuilder, a powerlifter, an executive, a CEO, it doesn't matter. There is 1,000 decisions a day, micro or massive, that we make. And this tool is in any given situation like that, especially like when my clients are in prep, I need them to know this tool before we start prep because it becomes so useful. Is the decision I'm about to make going to take me towards the goals, values, and life that I've talked about, that I say I want, or is it going to take me away? Now, for the average person, it's not about a perfect day. It's not about, every decision being towards. There's going to be times where those decisions just don't happen. It's about, can I make the majority of these decisions better than towards or away from where I want to go? And then that tool, we can start to even quantify and tangibly put a value to it where, okay, how many of those decisions did you make today? Well, a big thing for me is teaching micro behavior skills before we get to prep. Are you hitting your vegetable targets, your health targets, your cardio targets, your fruit targets, your protein targets? Okay, if the majority of those are yes, but you got one that was away, you went out with the guys for a night and you got on the beers instead of having your protein shake. Cool. Next week, what are we going to do different that's going to take you towards that goal? That's going to take you towards those values, because the objective is to live as much of your life towards those values and goals that you say define you and that you want to achieve. And then you really can't fail at life. At the end of the day, if the decisions that you are making are towards the outcome, the values that you say that you want, that define you as a person, then how can you say that your life is wrong or bad? Everyone's subjective, but arguably with that approach, you have a tangible tool to use to work towards what you want. And it's making decisions align with the values that you want to define you as a person. And I use that for I use that for my athletes, my preppers. I use that for my Gen Pop clients, because it empowers them to make the decision, and they can sit there and go, nah, you know what? Having 10 beers with my mates after work when I'm supposed to go train is stupid.
So where would neutral fall, right? Because no decision is still a decision.
Yeah, that's a good point. It is. And it's a hard situation to navigate, because even if they're, again, I would say to me, if someone was to say, my wife made the decision for me to go on here, or I just didn't step up to the plate and confront my boss or make that decision to say no. Well, we look at your values. Is not answering or stepping up align with those values? Well, no. Okay, so that decision is still away.
Yeah.
That's where you start to look at it and go, okay, those decisions are still taking me away from, because it's not just the goal, right? The overarching theme is this taking me towards the person I want to be? And that's when we strip that back, and we strip back the athlete side, we strip back the identity side, we strip back the contract of the pro card, whether you go to Pro Raw, whatever it is that you're going to, we strip that back. Who are you as a person? Well, that same strategy applies. Are these decisions making me a better person, or am I making the decisions that align with the type of person that I want to be? And then usually the type of person you want to be is someone who is athletically inclined. It is business inclined. It is, bodybuilding inclined. So they kind of follow the same path. So if part of those values are you're not stepping up and making a decision, I'd still argue that's an away decision that's taking you away from the life that you want, because you as a person should be confident and building that inner belief and that self-confidence to say, no, that isn't for me. That isn't what I want.
Yeah. Do you find that people typically want to jump ahead? So if we take the things that we've spoken about right now, and if you just follow that path, that's going to lead to progression towards X, right? Where X can be whatever their purpose is, right? Where people will wreck themselves trying to figure out what their purpose is, where sometimes you may never discover what that is, but the only way you're going to be able to discover what that is for all those things to be moving in that positive direction for you to be able to, you see what I'm saying? Is they're so wrapped around trying to figure the purpose out that they're not doing these core things that will actually show them what that purpose is.
Yes.
And that gets conflated with information online and all over the place.
Oh yeah.
Of find your purpose, find your purpose, find your purpose. What's your passion? And outside of religion, if my purpose is to live for Christ, right? Then outside of religion, there's going to be this big blank.
Yep.
And then people are mind fucking themselves because they're trying to figure out what it is. And to me, it doesn't matter as long as all those things are moving in that direction.
Yes.
Based upon the values and objectives. Even if the objectives and goals are going to change, the behaviors are still going to be moving through.
Exactly. So a really easy example of this was just going back to my injury and kind of where I lost myself. The big thing for me and why I preach bodybuilding so hard, but from a psychological perspective, the way to improve life, if it's done for the right reasons, is I can pinpoint the day that I truly identified what my purpose was and what I wanted to do with that company. I knew that I was always wanting something bigger, but as you said, there's a blank. It was going to be rugby league. It was going to be this contract. That didn't happen. It was going to be doing this craft and this trade. That didn't happen. But I always knew that there was something that I wasn't comfortable with doing nothing. And when I really recognized, like, what is my passion? What is the thing that I love doing? And it was, when I broke it down, it's like, I love training. I love pushing myself. I love, chasing something that's almost intangible. It's almost impossible. What's that thing that does that? And, I've always had a big love for Arnie. It was like, he was one of the first action heroes I ever saw. He was one of the first guys. I'm sure every bodybuilder that comes anywhere near a conversation like this will say Arnie. It might be earlier than that, but, usually it's Arnie. And I was like, I've always looked at that as something to strive towards. And once I started training and I started really getting back into training based on especially the fact the doctor said I couldn't, I was like, F you guys, this is what I'm about. This is what I'm going to do. You can't tell me I can't. I'm going to find, I spent 4 years putting a list of exercises together that didn't aggravate or hurt my problems. That didn't make the injury worse, but it didn't take care of them. So I'm like, I can still do that. And I put that list together. And so I'm like, I'm going to do this no matter what, especially because you said I can't. And it started off as that kind of like pride, that frustration, that, almost a whole screw you mentality. But the funny part is when I started really pushing it and I started taking myself to that next level, getting through the hunger, getting through the physique pain, suffering, being lean, suffering, energy depletion, looking at, the cognitive depletion because the brain stops working, you push yourself through those things. And then suddenly I realized that this is what I wanted to do, not just compete, but I wanted to help people reach a level of life that I had thought was impossible, that I struggled to get to, that I may have never reached. Like, I want to be the bridge for people that at a high performance level they may never have got to, but it came because I started striving. I worked towards that next big thing and I started working towards that outcome that at the time, 5 years ago when I started truly competing, I looked at being, 100 kilos on stage as impossible. Like, that's ridiculous. I was 70, 80 kilos overweight because I was so depressed. I was drinking, I was partying, I was still training, but I just wasn't doing it as much as I knew I could. The whole identity loss. And the more that I committed myself to it, the more I engaged in those behaviors, the more I had my goals on paper, I had them tangible, I aligned my values with what I was trying to achieve, then the purpose started presenting itself. The thing that I really wanted, that I've now built my entire life and belief around, started to present itself like, this is what I'm going to do. I can pinpoint from here back 5 years ago, never in a million years am I expecting that I'm going to be on talking with you about a podcast about this very concept. But the fact that I engaged, started and continued, it just started presenting itself. And so that's a big thing for me is, again, kind of like you said, we touched on before, is the purpose. It doesn't have to be written first. It doesn't have to be like you have to have everything clear, mapped out. but we have something, an objective, an aim that we're working towards, and then it's probably going to present itself. So eventually you'll know. And Dr. Jordan Peterson talked about this a lot, where he will say, you know, the moving forward is better than not moving at all, because then eventually you can see, is this for me? No, well, now I can pivot, I can deviate. At least if you're moving forward in line with those values and those ideals of you as a person, you're going to find something that aligns with you, that you are passionate about, that you can contribute from, that you can give back with, that's going to make you a better person, have you feel fulfilled. That's a big thing that I try to preach, is I don't want you to feel happy. I don't want you to feel great. I don't want you to feel good. I want to know that at the end of your time, and if I've been involved in this in some way, fantastic. But at the end of your time, when it's all done, do you feel fulfilled in the life that you left behind? And that, to me, if I can give that to my athletes, my bodybuilders, my clients, my executives, like, you can make money, but do you feel fulfilled about it? You can get on stage, but do you feel fulfilled about that endeavor? And if you don't, like, it's okay. You've strived towards, you've tried it, but can we pivot? Can we find that next thing? It might not be for you. That's cool. Powerlifting might not be for you. I once thought I was going to be a powerlifter. I loved the idea of just pushing a number, and then my back happened. I'm like, okay, that's not for me. So I can be defeated about it, I can be upset about it. Okay, it's just not for me. What's the next thing that pushes me? What's that thing? And then you start to connect. Does that feeling of fulfillment come? Do I feel in the moment present? Are my values aligned with this behavior? Do I give back from this? Can I contribute value to society from this? If that doesn't define your purpose, I don't know what will.
Well, here's the rub with all that, because this is real life, right? So everything can be aligned. You can be doing everything you're supposed to be doing, and all that are going to be there, and you're still not going to hit, you know, what you want to hit.
Yes.
You know, and that's just the reality of all that. But and this will kind of probably get more into the resilience, right? Some of it is a false perception.
Yes.
That is being over exaggerated.
Yes.
To where sometimes you got to go back to go forward. Sometimes you got to fail to move, you know, to succeed. But that first sense of, you know, I didn't hit this quarterly number or whatever it's going to be, or I didn't hit the quarterly number for 8 quarters, you know, doesn't mean you're not going to hit it on the 9th.
Yes.
But over a period, I mean, it could be, and it could be that a pivot needs to happen, but you're so stubborn, you won't make the pivot. So there's 2 types of people that kind of fall in there. There's the one that sense that little bit of resilience, and then boom, they're done. This isn't for me. You know, it's like, okay, fine, maybe, you know, because maybe they need that, and that's what's stopping them from everything that they're doing.
Yes.
You know, it's in powerlifting, I'll use the example of, you know, is if somebody's starting, they have to learn how to strain, right? And with a lot of lifters, as soon as they sense the bar slowing down, it's heavy, shit, I'm done. Yeah. Right. Or discomfort, I'm done. Yeah. Then the more that they strain and learn how to strain, they learn that if they just keep pushing, it will go.
Yes.
But it takes the repetition to be able to do that. Some people can take that and just say, this isn't for me. Right? They're done, but all they had to do was push for another second, and then it would have went through.
Yes.
You know, and so when you're dealing with trying to teach, and not teach, but build, because everybody has it.
Yes. Right?
Everybody has resilience, right? It's, as I said before, everybody has all these attributes.
Yes.
They're just not connecting them to the things that they want to do.
Yes.
And how do you go about building that?
So a big thing for me, and this will probably conflict with a lot of coaches that listen to this, or people that think the opposite of what I'm about to say, is I actually spend most of my time talking clients off competing. What I do first is approach a kind of exposure, for a lack of a better word. Before I go putting you in the deep end of the negatives and the positives that can come from on-stage competitive bodybuilding, I want to see if you have, or we can teach or build those traits and skills first. So I'm a big believer in exposing the client, especially if they're first or second time competitors, where, you know, they haven't actually really truly experienced being lean before. They haven't experienced being hungry. And like you said, they haven't experienced the strain. I agree wholeheartedly that teaching failure and hard training is a skill. And a lot of people don't understand that skill. And so a big thing for me is I will expose them to these gradual concepts over time, especially because I will approach it, you know, 12 months, 2 years before we get on stage. You know, it's counter to my business advisors, you know, how to make money, you know, put people through preps. That's great. That's cool. But that's not the philosophy of how I coach. It's not the philosophy of how I build what we're building in bodybuilding, in physique development. So a big thing for me is I'll try and talk down a client who comes in, they're guns swinging, they're, screaming from the rooftops, like, I'm going to be a pro. I want to do this. I'm like, I used to fall for that. I've had this conversation a lot this week while being in America. I used to fall for that a lot. I was hyped that clients would come in and they're, I'm going to be this and I want to do that. And for you, I won't stop. I'm like, cool. And then I would see the behaviors didn't align with that. And they were all talking. I was like, that's cool. So now we try and take that step back. We deconstruct it. I'm like, all right, let's expose you to what bodybuilding could be before you even get near a stage. And a big thing in Australia at the moment is like photo shoot content, or like, getting lean for a photo shoot, or getting lean for a beach shoot or a gym shoot. It might just be, whether it's be for social media content, whether it be for your business, whatever it might be. And so something along those lines is a really easy tool to give someone a taste of, this is what bodybuilding is kind of like. But if we look at tangibly photo shoot conditioning versus stage winning conditioning, it's another 3 or 4 degrees of difficulty away.
It's 6 or 8 more weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like we use that sort of scaffold or template to say, let's find something similar to the goal you're trying to achieve. That, we know it's extreme. I preach extreme goals. I love people saying like, I want to do this impossible thing. Cool. Let's do that, because a lot of the time people come in with these superficial goals and they don't really say what they mean. So I love if someone comes in and says to me like, hey, I want to do this big thing. Fantastic. Let's write that down. But we're going to start with building these exposures. I'm going to get you exposed to being hungry on a diet. I'm going to get you exposed to being in a surplus where you're uncomfortable, you're fatter, you're having to force feed yourself. I'm going to expose you to having to do cardio. Some things that you might not have done before to the same degree. And then we're going to say, you know what, instead of getting on stage with a tan in front of 1,000 people and you're going to be judged on your weakest body parts and you're unsure if you can even handle that, we're going to do a photo shoot. Or we'll do, we're going to get you in front of a camera. We're going to get you lean enough to feel confident for a shirtless photo, maybe some content for your social media, whatever. Doesn't even need to go into it. Maybe it's just for your partner. Maybe it's for your husband or your wife, like, some boudoir photos or something like that where you feel, confident. I feel good naked. Because a lot of men especially, there's been a long time since they felt comfortable enough to be naked in front of their wife and, have sex with the light on. So maybe that's what we work towards. It's still going to take the same skills, the same approach, but it's not going to be as extreme. Now, if we get to that photo shoot and you're like, man, that sucked. Well, I got news for you about how bodybuilding is going to go. Because if you don't enjoy every aspect of that, like, you're not going to enjoy being hungry, but if you aren't embracing the suck, if you aren't embracing that hunger, that suffering, that training strain, that lack of recoverability from just doing a photo shoot, I promise you're not enjoying bodybuilding. No. So at least with that approach, we can say, okay, you tried it. We had a crack. It's not for you. What's the next thing we want? I had a client of mine now who's been with me since almost the start. He was one of my first prep clients, and he come to me and he said, I want to be a bodybuilder. I want to be a physique athlete. I want to be a physique competitor. So like men's physique, with the board shorts. He's like, I want to do that. I'm like, cool, man. And I was pushing him towards it. I was in his corner. His body was resistant. His life wasn't set up for it. This is before I really had the systems in place to screen these things. And I had this conversation with him. He's also a pilot. And he was loving being a pilot. Like, it was when we actually really got sitting down and talking, he's become a very close friend to me, actually. And, we got talking about his family life, his relationships, his career ambitions. And now what we realized was the physique side of things, it was great in theory. We now have him in the Australian Defence Force training towards what we call the Advanced Fighter Pilot Program. So, for us in Australia, you basically have to go through to your baseline credentials, your baseline training, get accepted into that, get accepted into the pilot programs of the Australian Air Force. And then, we, as far as my knowledge on the topic, we purchased a lot of things from you guys, especially things like F-18s, F-35s, like they cost us a lot of money. So I believe we're very strict on who gets behind those. Yeah. And so there's a program.
You should be.
Yeah, which you should be, right?
They're expensive.
They're expensive things. Yeah. Like, that's a $300 million aircraft. Let's not just put Greg behind it. So for us, it's like there's a big program to kind of get you there. And he was like, I actually want to do this. I was like, man, why didn't you tell me that 6 months ago, 12 months ago?
Well, you may not have known.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, he knew that he wanted to fly. Like, he wanted to fly. He was a pilot by trade, but it was like commercial and flight school. He taught flight school. But we sat down and he was like, man, I want to give back to my country. I want to operate at this level. We started training him for the, what we call bear with me here, our SASR. So basically our special operations. And we started training him up for that. because in our logic, if he could handle the elite special forces of Australia's training, then the pilot program, it's not weak by any means, but it's kind of a step back. And so we're like, okay, so he loved training. He loved the consistency. He loved the dedication, the focus, but it just wasn't who he was. He wasn't going to be a physique competitor. And I was like, cool. We tried it out. We gave it a crack. You've had several cracks, actually. Life got in the way every time. Like, do you really want this? And for me as a coach, I think that's my responsibility. I would feel ethically and morally wrong to put someone on stage and force them to be on stage because I want them to, not because they want to be there, because it can mess your life up.
Oh yeah.
It can, like, I've known pros, I've talked with pros, I've engaged with people where even at the highest level, they're on breaking point and life is, teetering on the, is this worth it kind of direction. And so the average amateur, I would feel, not only have I done a disservice as a coach, but as a person, as who I am as a person, I have failed you by trying to force you to be on stage because you didn't want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had that conversation. I was like, I will coach you through this. Like, you know how to train. You're driven to be athletic. You're driven to be consistent. So the side that really he needed help on was the psychological side, the mental side, the skill set side in that regard. Because at that level, again, those resilience, the fortitude, the not giving up, those skills kick in when it comes to that type of training. A lot of the training, most guys, you read any book on elite special forces operations, the guys that come in cocky and arrogant, they fall first. So my job with him was, let's get you away from this. That's not what you want. And that's okay. That's perfectly okay. We gave it a crack. And I've identified this is not working out. We were 12 weeks out from a show, I believe, and his body fat loss just dropped. It just stopped. There was plateaus. Nothing was moving. His food was coming down. Supplementation was coming down. Drugs were coming down, going up. And there was just no shift in his body fat and his weight. And like, we had this conversation. I was like, your life is just not set up to do this. What I'm about to do to you is going to be hell. Do you actually want to go through with it? And it's not as a sense of like an escape or an excuse to justify quitting, but it was, if what I'm about to do to you is, I've been through very deep diets to get on stage. If you're not set up for this, it will ruin you. Are you sure you want this? And we had the conversation. He said, no. And I was like, what do you want to do? Let's have that conversation because I'll coach you. And he's like, I want to get into the fighter pilot program. He's like, I fly. I'm like, that's cool, but I want to be an elite fighter pilot. Fantastic. Where is he right now? He's literally in those schools. He's now doing the simulations. He's working his way up to, he's doing flights now. So he's not in there yet, but it's again, such an arduous process. It's a long process in Australia to get that. But we made that pivot. We assessed it and said, you know what? It's not for you. Well, we used the criteria. We used the kind of the skills and the traits and these topics we've talked about and said, you know what, man, it's probably not for you, but that's okay because you still want to pursue something what I would deem high performance. Being an elite fighter pilot is pretty high performance. So I know that you're someone who wants to push yourself. Let's pivot. Let's take the skills you've learned from bodybuilding, from training. You know how to train to fail. You know how to push yourself. Guess what you're going to have to do over here? We know how to sacrifice. You're going to have to lose time with your family. You've already done that over here. Let's do it over here. Are you okay with those things? Yeah. And he has not complained once. He'll call me, basically paying me to be on retainer to call him through the mental problems. He's basically paying me to say, I need help here. What do I do? The training's taken care of. That's easy. He knows how to do that. The thing that I'm really coaching him for, that I'm really getting a result from him for, is basically being there to say, hey, this is how you use this tool. Let's try this strategy. Figure this out. I didn't build, to go on a little bit of a tangent, I had him build a replica setup in his living room because they kind of all got put on base in his living domain, a fighter pilot cockpit. I'm like, one of the things he was struggling with was the procedure of operations, the strategy, kind of how to operate each sort of like flight sequence and things like that. I was like, mock this up. So you are there. So you're associating the smells, the sights, the sounds, the setup. So that when you're in that room, when you're in that pit and you're flying, it's just second nature. You've done it. You've done it a million times. You know what it feels like. You know what it looks like. You know what it's set up like. And that was like a single skill like that changed his entire approach. But the point being, to go back to it, was we started with bodybuilding and we said, that's not for me. And now we're literally training him to be a fighter pilot.
So when you're dealing with the resilience examples that you gave me, a mini cut, for instance, or bulking, they're all physical related, right? So, and can teach those skills, but the real resilience is going to come from the mental side,
Mhm.
you know, and because they're in their head all day long.
Yes.
They're only in the gym an hour a
Yes.
day, you know, maybe every day, but most likely
Yes.
not, you know, so it's not in there, but
Mhm.
they still have to live within their own head, you know, throughout that whole time to
Mhm.
where there's always resistance
Yes.
there,
Mhm.
you know, self-talk, negative
Mhm.
talk, you know, social groups, you know,
Mhm.
influence, you know, from everywhere,
Yep.
you know, positive and negative.
Mhm.
So how do you help them to build the resilience there? Because that's going to have a greater impact
Mhm.
than the resilience they're going to have from those certain situations there.
Oh yeah, 100%. So, uh, a big thing for me is we wrote an ebook on this. I just live to give away information. Is how to build your optimal environment. And one of the things I talk about is if you really want to push yourself, you really want to see what you're capable of, assess your social circle and change it. Set goals and set boundaries with your social circles. And if you really want to push yourself mentally to see if you're focused, if you can handle it, watch the friends that push back. Because a lot of the time you change, for lack of a better word, you set a goal, you try to be different, you try to step up. The circle that you're associated with, the circle that you are surrounding yourself with, they only want you to be so much better, because eventually it puts it on them that, hey, I'm not changing. And now this guy's stepping up and he's, you know, doing something different. He's an outlier to what he used to be. You know, we used to go out for beers and now he's not coming. And if you really want to get resilient at building that, like building those mental skills, tell your friends that you've known for 20 years, 10 years, that you don't do that anymore. And they will push those boundaries very quickly. And I'm a big believer of, you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. If you genuinely believe this is what you want to do, one of the first things I do is have my clients assess that social circle. Because not every person's wrong, not every person's a bad person, but assess that social circle and ask yourself, how many people in this room want to see me succeed when I've just told them this new goal, when I've just told them this big dream that I have and I'm going to work towards. I arguably have changed my social circle 5-6 times in the last 10 years. The people that I surrounded myself with when I first had my car accident, it was all about drinking. It was always like, oh, you know, you can't play anymore, so you may as well come to the hill and drink beers, you know, pre-game, things like that. And don't get me wrong, that was their thing. That was their weekend hobby. But I was an athlete first before I was a spectator or a coach. I'm like, that's not how I approach my rehab. Like, that's not going to get me better. It's not going to beat my depression. Drinking and alcohol and drugs makes a depression tenfold worse. So we expose that situation. I have clients assess those social circles. I have clients have hard conversations with family members. Before we start a prep, we're going to sit down with your wife or your husband and say, hey, this is what this is going to look like. Because that conversation gets real tough real quick when that person's like, hey, you know what? I sold you a bit of a lie about bodybuilding. It's not just training. I'm going to miss family events. I'm going to miss drinking. I'm going to miss going out. I'm going to miss weddings. I'm going to miss doing things with the family. And it's not to say that, you know, you're a selfish SOB, but it's a selfish endeavor. So exposing those conversations is a really powerful way to just start with the idea of building that mental resilience, building that fortitude first. Because if you can say no to friends that you've known for 20 years, like, you're on your way to building something. And it's not that the friends are wrong, but who you're trying to become now is different to who you were 10 years ago. And so you have to be comfortable having those tough conversations. And the best way to get comfortable having them is doing them. Be in that room and say, you know what, lay it out with your friends. Get on a platform in 6 months. I want a 300 kilo deadlift or squat. I want to be 3% body fat. That doesn't leave me the room to have beer and wine at dinner or untracked food or, you know, slip on my meal plan. I've got to be dialed in. And you'll see a lot of people say yes up front, but those boundaries start to get pushed very quickly. Oh, you can come out for one. Oh, two isn't going to hurt. Oh, you know, you used to come out for pizza and beers. Like, sure, you can have one slice. Anyone that's been to a decent level of condition knows that if you add that one slice, that changes everything.
Yeah. I would add to that their digital circles as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right. Because they're probably around that more than they're around their friends.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So their digital influence,
mm-hmm.
you know, via social media or whatever it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it could just be what you're actually watching, what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, if it's TV, what you're actually watching,
mm-hmm.
what you're doing. And that's not to say that you can't watch TV.
Yep.
You know, but if you're watching 8 hours a day,
yeah.
you know, that's different than if you're watching 2 hours a day, but you're
yep.
reading 3 hours a day or whatever it's going to
yeah.
be. And with the social media, you can either be looking for the drama, yep. which we all tend to want to see
yes.
first. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know if that's biological or what
yeah.
it is, but being able to pivot away from that you know,
Yes.
and looking for things that are going to actually help support and move you. I just had this conversation with somebody while I was sitting down for lunch, literally, who was, you know, kind of about that, but it was dialed back a little bit more than what we're talking about here. It was more just around training. And it was, you know, if it's a bodybuilder prepping for a show or a powerlifter, and now they're, whatever that time period is where they go into prep mode, which is still weird for me to hear because I'm old. I mean, there was, it used to just be you bodybuilder, there was no prep mode or prep time. But when that comes in, all your influence, if this is the way you're going to train and this is the way you're going to diet, everything about training and diet needs to be ignored. Right? Because the focus just has to be on what that plan is from here to here. Or if you find something interesting, you bookmark it, you save it, but you're not delving into it because you do that, you're going to want to change what you're doing. You're going to doubt what you're doing. And it's going to create those situations in there where you got to be committed to what that is, which is kind of changing that digital. You know, during that time period, do you have maybe a different Instagram account that just has cartoons and shit, you know, and you only use that one, you don't use the one that has these other things in there, because that influence there is, in my opinion, is. I've spent most of my life training in unconditioned gyms, and I know most of you that are training in garage gyms, private gyms, black iron gyms, know what I'm talking about when I say the heat sucks. It kills your motivation to go to the gym. It kills your performance, but it doesn't have to if you keep your electrolytes up. That's why today's episode is sponsored by Element. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink with everything you need and nothing you don't. This means lots of salt with none of the junk. No sugar, no colors, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, no BS. It contains an electrolyte ratio of 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. Element can help prevent and eliminate headaches, muscle cramps, fatigue, brain fog, sleeplessness, and other common symptoms associated with electrolyte deficiency. Right now, Element is offering a free sample pack with any drink mix purchase. Get yours at drinkelement.com. This deal is only available through the Table Talk link. Are you looking to boost recovery, enhance your sex drive, and improve performance in the gym? Do you think your hormones are out of whack and you're tired of getting the runaround from your doctor? You know, things like your hormones are just fine, stop lifting heavy weights, etc., etc., etc. I know what that feels like, as I've been down that road most of my life. This is why we've partnered with Marek Health. Marek Health is a premium telehealth platform that specializes in hormone optimization and preventative medicine, ensuring a better quality of life. Marek Health offers a Table Talk panel tailored for our listeners, featuring comprehensive tests like total and free testosterone, sensitive estradiol, and advanced markers like lipoprotein A and IGF-1. These comprehensive panels of up to 84 carefully selected biomarkers allow you to identify areas of enhancement and maximize your physical, cognitive, and sexual performance. It's much different than the panels you may get from your doctor. Choose between self-service options where you can select lab panels based upon decades of experience, or opt for guided optimization with your own health coach. Start with a detailed breakdown of your labs and receive personalized treatment options, both over the counter and prescription. Visit marekhealth.com/tabletalk and use the code TABLETALK to get 10% off your first order. Marek Health isn't just about better health, it's about empowering you to take control of your well-being. Have more of a, it has more, I don't want to say more profound effect, because in person is definitely going to have more of a profound effect, but it's got, it's like a machine gun compared to, you know, a pistol shooting you, right? So you're just being sprayed, you know, so it's got more time, right? There's more consistent exposure, more consistent exposure, which is going to play into that. And I don't think people take that, you know, serious enough.
Oh, they don't,
you know, with that, because it plays all these different weird ass roles, where I've known some competitors that they just log off, right? And it's good from their competitor standpoint, but it's bad if they're trying to build a social media following, because that's the storyline people want to follow.
Yes.
So they're in this weird conundrum to be able to try to figure all that out. So how do you go? What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, it's a big question. It's a loaded question. The big thing, again, going back to even cultivating your optimal environment that I talked about, is I'm a big believer that you're in control of your auditory and your visual stimulus. So how you're curating the room, but also how you're curating your social medias. You are in control of who you talk to, who you follow, who you see. Now, that can go for food, it can go for training, it can go for educators, talkers. Social media is big on polarity. It's big on, tribalism. It's big on that sexual content of like grabbing your attention. I'm going to say that rage bait, clickbait, attention grabbing thing. And then all of a sudden you're looking at that, you're 12 weeks out and you don't feel as lean as you should be. You're like, hey coach, like this guy said this, why aren't we doing this? And so I'm big on, if they're not people that you would follow to grow your life, why are you following them in prep? And then really, if you're not following them in prep, why are you following them anyway?
Yeah.
Because like, to me, social media is a powerful tool. Social media, if I were to break it down, is the reason me and you have connected to.
Oh yeah. To me, it's a net positive.
It has to be. But at the same time, it still comes with its downfalls. And so you have to be in control of what you see and what you do and what you interact with, who you talk to, just as much as, social media can be used to follow the drama, to follow the crap, to follow the psychological detrimental stuff. It can be used to find the right content, speak with the right people. There's motivation pages, there's educational coaches, there's informative information out there. There's just people's journey. You can follow Chris Bumstead. One of my favorite things about Chris is that he's now at the point of his career where he's talking about these psychological skills like mindfulness and being present during your training, not having these drama-filled social media. He's having the exact same conversation. He's literally the pinnacle of classic physique bodybuilding. I doubt a person that trains in the world doesn't know who he is. And he's sitting there saying, like, you know what? Control these things, control your emotions, take care of how you view this. Don't surround yourself with these things. Remove that stuff from your page. Like, the best of the best are saying it. We're here saying it. It's a true point. You have to look at it and go, is what I'm curating in my feed that I'm going to sit on the toilet, I'm going to sit when I'm with my family, I'm going to sit when I'm in traffic, however you view it, it's all the time. Is this stuff adding productive, positive information and stimulus to your life? Well, if not, and we know with whether it's powerlifting, whether it's bodybuilding, whether it's strongman, negative stress adds up. In bodybuilding, it's going to impact your look. It's going to impact how you sleep. It's going to impact how you feel. It's going to impact your show day, peak week, all these things. So if you're adding net negative stress to your life, yet you can control it, why aren't you doing it? Why don't you take it away? Like, I have some clients, and I've done it myself, where the last couple of weeks where it's, you're really in your head and it's like, I want to see what that other competitor's doing. I want to see, then I get to the point where I'm like, what's going to be easier? Just turn it off. Just turn it off for a little while, take a step back. When you feel like watching it, we're going to go for a walk. We're going to accept the suck, accept those feelings, accept those emotions. Don't try and repress them. Don't try and deny them. But we're not going to give in and go peek on these other people, because that doesn't do anything. It doesn't serve you. You can't control what other people are doing. So there's no need to use it. So for that period of time, like, man, last couple of weeks, you're really feeling it. Let's take a step back and put it away. But for the most part, in prep, you're not going to tell someone to deny social media for 12 straight months, 6 months. You're going to say, hey, you're in control of this. How are you curating the room? What does your feed look like? Are these people that you would follow outside of a prep? Are these pages that you would follow outside of prep? I'll start to get clients that they'll follow food pages, they'll follow big eat pages. America is massive for like eating competitions, and YouTube channels, like there's guys I'll follow where they have like, we gotta do 12,000 calories in one day. Is that something you would want to do outside of prep? No. Then why are you following it? You know that it's not serving you. You're just hungry.
Well, the interesting thing to me is this is not new.
Yes.
Right? Is, pre-social media or pre-content, people are making all these weird asses. Like, you're assuming that the media wasn't lying, right? Well, if you really think this through, it was way easier for them to lie if there's only 5 newspapers. Yeah. Right? Or one per city. It's way easier for them to lie, and nobody can comment back to it. Exactly. Except for a letter to the editor that may get pitched or may not get pitched. If you're buying magazines, are you buying tabloids, which is full of drama, or are you buying, something that's not full of drama? We assume that all the bodybuilding magazines were not lying. Yep. That they weren't they didn't have an agenda to try to sell supplements, so it's, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it still all falls back into, that person has to take that ownership to make the decision of, what are they going to absorb, who are they going to be around, and so forth. There's just more of it, but the decision is still the same. People haven't changed.
Yes.
So it's
fundamentally at every level, one of the key things that an athlete has to do is take the utmost ownership. And it's something that, like, when I know someone's not ready to be an athlete or isn't athletically inclined, there's a lot of finger pointing and a lack of thumb pointing. And it's a lot of, this coach was at fault, this happened, and these things. And yeah, there's always things in life that are going to happen for sure. But even in the context of building your social media or how you view social media, what you use it for, as an athlete, you are responsible and you have to take ownership for the decisions you make and the things that you do. Yes, there's social pressures, there's psychosocial environments, there's, economic factors that come into play, but who's on your social media platform, that's your responsibility. Who you follow, what pages you look up to, that's your responsibility. Who are you following that's going to positively impact your prep or help you understand things better? Or maybe just put out some information you find useful. It doesn't have to be a for or against position. It just might be information. You're more in control of that. Like, you have control over that factor. Same thing with, where do you get your groceries from? Is it somewhere that usually has like takeaway nearby, or is it somewhere that's just on its own? You go to a grocer that's, you know what aisles to go down. What time is your schedule? What time is your routine? How are you doing things? How do you train? Are you training with intent? Are you using social media whilst you're training? Are you distracted? These are all things you can take ownership of as an athlete. And, they're factors that if someone doesn't show me early on, I know they're not ready to be an athlete. They're not ready to prep, because if you're not doing it, if you're not taking that level of accountability early on, you're definitely not doing it when you're starving and you're hungry and you're tired.
Well, that's always an interesting one to me, because when they start blaming the coach, they seem to forget they hired the person.
Yes.
So the ultimate decision was already made.
Yep.
Which is the accountability back on them. If they're blaming judges,
yes,
well, you decided to be in that show or lift in that meet. So it always comes back. No matter what it is. My wife's a bitch or whatever it is. Well, you decided to hire her.
Yes.
Or you decided to marry her. Right?
Yeah.
Hire,
yeah.
Right. Which I guess could be the case, right? Mail order brides. And so it could kind of play into that. But, that's also tough conversations to kind of navigate, especially if, and this will be a good question for you as well, because a lot of these questions can just be simply answered with one word, and that is and.
Yeah.
So if somebody's, complaining or bitching right. And you just keep doing that. And after a while, they're just going to stop.
Yeah.
But you can't do that if you just took somebody on as a client.
No.
You have to have this time period to where you're building this trust. So how do you navigate that? Or is that all spent on the goals and the values and all that? And there's a hierarchy in how you've laid this all out.
So it'll depend on the time frame of the goal. It's are you someone who wants to be prepping in 6 months, or are you someone who, you're working with me for, we've got a couple of years here, because we're big on pushing, I don't want a 16, 20 week prep with a client and then they're gone. I'm big on building a relationship with that person where I'm impacting their life over time. And, they view working with us over years. It's very common in bodybuilding where you hire a coach for prep, you might do 20 weeks and you're like, see you later. But, for that ownership, for that accountability, we're building it over time where they have a sense of trust. Like, one of the big issues, if someone doesn't trust you, they're not going to be honest with you. And so us as coaches, we assume someone is going to come to us being honest and they're going to tell us the truth. You go through someone's meal plan, you go through someone's MyFitnessPal, I promise you that is not the case. And so, how long are you spending with someone building that trust and that comfortability where we can have those honest, hard conversations? That's a coaching relationship. I don't preach dictatorships where it's like, you do this and you shut the fuck up. Like, that's some degrees that's necessary. But if we got years together, I want to know that if something went wrong or something's coming up, you're telling me, because then we can work together on it. You can take that accountability. Hey, you know what? I didn't plan ahead and I didn't pack my food, and I went to a wedding or I went to this event and, I ate off plan, had cake and yada, yada. Cool. Thank you. Like, you told me this. Now we can adjust the plan. We can adjust the response instead of saying you're this, you're that, you're a blame. I, as a coach, can respect they've taken accountability. Now I can teach them through that moment. That's a teachable moment. Like, one of the things that I loved about team sports, growing up, coaching it, playing it. Even like, one of my favorite childhood movies is Remember the Titans. Last year we came here for the first time to America. I said to my mentor who brought us over here, I'm going to Alexandria High School. That's where I Remember the Titans was filmed. Like, that movie had a profound impact on my life. But the traits that we have to learn and teach in team sports, for some reason, gets lost in things like physique competition coaching, which I don't understand why. I look at my athletes and my clients, I'm like, I'm here to teach you. I'm here to give you and empower you with lessons and education that I already have that you don't. I'm here to close that gap. And so, yeah, you might have made a mistake, but that's why I don't start you prepping as soon as we meet. We're going to build that up over time so that you trust me that I'm not going to, attack you, ridicule you. I'm going to teach you. And then with that, you go, well, now this client has a trust in me. They're going to be honest. And we're building that honesty over time where I push ownership. I push accountability. One of the best books that an athlete will ever read, if you aren't already athletically inclined, is Extreme Ownership by Jocko. Get that book in your hands and read it and understand that you are responsible for everything that's happened in your life and the responses that you have. Even if you're not directly responsible, I can't help that someone hit me with a car, but I was responsible with how I responded. I could turn to drugs, drinking, booze, not sleeping, but I looked at that and go, how does that serve me? I'm responsible for the response. And so in that same context, building that ownership for an athlete over time, especially now as bodybuilding becomes a more, and you probably find it with the platform as well. These sports are becoming more generally acceptable than they used to be. People want to try them out. They want to get their hands on it. Say, I want to get under a 300-pound squat for the first time. I want to get on stage at 3% body fat. Well, have you dieted first? Let's start sport. Let's work up to it. And that for me is like, if I'm going to have that impact on you as a one-to-one coach, I look back at my coaches, the best coaches that I had in my sporting career, my team sports careers, they didn't rip me off the field and call me a piece of shit because I threw a bad pass or missed a tackle. Said, hey, what are you doing next time that's going to make that not happen? Or what are you practicing? What are we doing this week of training that's going to make that better? So we don't repeat that same mistake. That's my job as a coach. I view that same lens when I'm coaching clients. Like, hey, we're going to take time to build this up, but yeah, show me your MyFitnessPal when you went away to that wedding. What did it look like with your nutrition? Oh, I tried to do this and also had some cake and also, okay, cool. What can we do next time? So maybe you can have the cake, but it's not in prep, but we can still be pretty accurate. Well, I might not have as much food during the day. I might have my protein, my vegetables and fruit earlier in the day. So I've got my health factors, but then I've got room to have that piece of cake. I've got room to enjoy myself without feeling like I've let you down or failed. Now that client trusts me, they're going to have that conversation, that open dialect in the future, and they're going to learn. Okay, so in prep, this isn't acceptable, but in life, I have some room of flexibility. And those conversations allow the athlete to build that ownership and that accountability and feel safe telling you. Because like, it's one thing to have accountability, but if my client was to come to me and say, hey, look, I stuffed up, I did this, or I fell off plan, I did this, or you know what, I missed a few days of training because life happened. I've had clients apologize to me because, something got in the way and they couldn't train. I was like, you don't ever have to apologize to me. Like, this is your goal, but your dad is in hospital, or like your kid is sick, or like you got flown out to work. Like, a lot of my clients are fly in, fly out miners and things like that. You can't be 100% accurate on a job site, on a mining site where you're 3 weeks away from home. There's going to be some fluctuation, but I respect that you've told me, because now we can work on skills that teach you to be better. And you've taken that ownership and that accountability and said, you know what, I stuffed up. Back in my day when we played sport, I guarantee you the same way. You make a mistake on the field, hand goes up, my fault, not happening again. That same lesson I try to teach my athletes without attacking them for it. Whereas like in bodybuilding, one of the things I find is a lot of the time it's, we're going to attack that client because they slipped up on the meal plan or the nutrition, or they missed a training session, or this happened, or life got in the way, family got sick. Yeah, in prep, there's a lot of sacrifices. You don't have room for a lot of mistakes. But if I'm teaching you and building you up to that, how am I serving you as a client by attacking you for making a mistake? That mistake is a teachable lesson. That's an opportunity for you to get better, and I'm going to use it.
Well, it's also valuable because I'll take a stab at the question that you said you didn't really know why, with the platform or the stage. And now this, I believe this has changed over time because there's a wider net, it's more acceptable, and it's had more exposure. So more people are being pulled into the sport. But, and when looking back and the people that I've been associated with through strength sports and most of my life, you're dealing with people that if they did play team sports and they excelled at it, the one thing that they couldn't stand about it is they worked harder than everybody else, but they would always, they were losing.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, fuck this.
Yeah.
You know, I'm busting my ass and we're not getting any results. So I'm going to do something else. I'm going to do something that's wrestling. I'm going to do something that's more individual based. Yeah. That way my work is going to be a result of what my return is. Yes. Right. So you're dealing with introverted, you know, personality types that have pretty much a really strong anti-establishment, you know, philosophy, because fuck this teacher, fuck this coach, fuck this, fuck that. That's generally their default answer, you know, to anything that's going to come from a group situation. You know, like a group says, hey, do this. The first response is fuck you. And then maybe why, you know, but that's the default, which is going to kind of come into that. Now, as that net's gotten bigger, right, it's been able to capture, you know, people that are coming from that team sport type of background. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've seen the advancements that we've seen across the board too, because when you're dealing with that introverted type and that anti-establishment, you're also probably, you have a lower genetic pool. Yes. Right. Where if you're dealing with the team athletes, which are put on a pedestal. Yes. You know what I'm saying? They're more valued in society. You know, there's financial rewards, scholarships, and all this other type of thing.
Yeah. We're a unique sport.
Yeah. I mean, it's different. Yes. You know, from that standpoint of that. And so now if they're moving into these sports, you're pulling in a bigger genetic pool, which is going to propel, you know, more people to the top than a limited genetic pool. Yes. And just numbers alone will do that as well. Just more people will be able to do that. But that's why I kind of think that falls, because if you look deep into most of the people that are at the higher levels of all these different things, you're going to find that, because those people also are going to be more comfortable being in distress or anger or being uncomfortable or whatever it's going to be. They live in that. That's it's like, how many people during, you know, the lockdowns were like, this is the greatest thing in the world. Like, I don't fucking like people anyhow. Right. As long as I got a place to train in, I have food. This is fucking amazing. This is no change to my personality whatsoever. This is like fucking perfect. Right. But with those people though, not having any social contribution to them is going to limit their ability to compete at the highest level as well. So, you know, that they don't understand that, but I think that would kind of explain that personality type. But that personality type is also going to need to be treated, as you were saying, you know, because their initial first response back isn't going to be what you want it to be. Yes. Right. And it's almost like it's a default. Yes. And themselves taking ownership of knowing that's their default. Yes. Need to pause. Yep. You know, before they speak. Yes. You know, age will teach them that as well. Yes. But then they'll pause and say, okay, look, this is my default. I just fucking hate people, you know, but, you know, maybe I'll listen. Maybe I'll like this person. Yeah. You know, instead of just that complete shut off type of thing. Yeah. It's taking that, the ownership of trying to be better. I think it's a big thing that we try to approach it with is when you take ownership, the only thing that can come from it is you get better. And a lot of people struggle to see that straight away, because they think, you know, if I take accountability for this versus blame someone else, I'm going to get in trouble, or, you know what, I'm going to lose, or, you know, I'll be thrown out. But reality is, if you can take that accountability, that ownership, and start with, you know what, I don't like people, or I need to be more coachable. I need to take accountability that I'm not coachable. That's only going to make you better as a client, which can make our relationship better as a coach, which can make your results only improve. And we teach you the necessary skills and work on the necessary skills to get where you want to go. But it all comes back, and this is like such a hard concept for people to grasp, is that you just have to take ownership of it. You have to take responsibility for the fact that you are where you are, that you're in the situation you're in. Even the fact that you're lacking coachability is a skill, which to me, coachability is a skill. Some people just aren't good at being coached, and they're a struggle to work with, but you know, they take work, they take time, but you can change that. You can fix that. But if that's something that you lack, you take ownership of it. You say, you know what, I'm not very good at being not only told what to do, but follow the plan, trust the advice, trust the person I'm paying, show up every day and do the things necessary to get the job done. That's my fault. Okay, well,
me as a coach, I'm not prepping you until we're in that position. You can waste your money and go to another coach. You can leave me because I'm not rushing to put you on stage. And this is something that I try to teach them from my approach. If I'm willing to lose you as a client and throw money away, surely that's got to tell you something. That's got to tell you something about how serious I see this and the work we need to do, that you're not ready to get on stage, or you're not ready to start a prep. You're not ready to go 100% in. We might need that first trial. We might need a photo shoot, or we might need that other goal along the way. But if I'm willing to risk saying no to you and lose the money, that's surely got to connect at some level and say, oh, this guy's pretty serious. Like, yeah, I probably shouldn't rush off to just the next coach. He actually cares.
One of the other things with, if they're not willing to take ownership of that is, I'm a big believer in reframing things, right? Well, you can't reframe what you don't own.
Yes.
Right. So then they're in a perpetual negative self-talk all the time because they can't reframe, what's in there. So it's no matter what the situation is, then you're just living in a victim, mentality, all the time because of that whole thing. And if they can't learn the positive self-talk, which is hard, right?
Oh yeah.
And it's still not going to make up the majority of what's going through somebody's head in a given day, but that's not even possible. If there's no ownership with
yes. And self-talk in of itself is a skill. Like there's a multitude of data and studies on just the different types of self-talk, but even that requires ownership. Are you owning how you talk to yourself? Are you owning from start of day to end of day how you talk to yourself across time? What conversations you're having with you. You're the only person who has to live in your head as an athlete. Are you owning the way you speak? Are you owning the way you visualize, you think about, you reinforce, you encourage? A lot of the time, like when I have my athletes, I'm like, I'm too small, I'm not going to be ready. Yeah, it's your first time on stage. You're not going to be the 120 kilo guy who's just genetically gifted to be on stage. But let's look at how you're talking about yourself through this process. One of my clients was 35% body fat. He was obese, and he knows that. And now he's arguably probably going to be one of the leanest guys on stage that he steps on. He's not going to be the biggest by any means. And with that self-talk and that ownership, like you said, from that perspective, I will use that moment and say, okay, but where did you come from? As much as you can say, I'm not going to be the biggest guy, which is fine. That's a fair feedback point. That's ownership in bodybuilding. I'm not the biggest. By all means, is it something you want to be in the future? Cool, we can work towards that. But right now, in the present prep that we're in the present scenario, where did you come from? Oh, I used to be obese and I hated myself. Where are you now? I'm sub 5%. Most people won't hit that number in their entire life. The majority of the population struggles to get sub 10%. And you're sitting at 5 to 4% body fat. Surely we can frame this in a way where you're looking at this as a positive outcome, and now we've experienced something that you love and you want to do in the future. Again, we go back to the start of the conversation. Just by the act of doing, he's improved his life, his relationship, his career, his job, his love for training. He's put his physique to a position he never thought possible. How is that not something you want to sit back and go, oh, wow, I'm in charge of that. Like I took control of that. That to me was like, when I have those conversations and I can have that with them and then it clicks, I'm like, this is a skill. How you talk to yourself from now on for the rest of prep, I want you to view it like this, because that's a skill. That's something that you can control. You can't control how big you are. That'll take time. That's something we'll work on. You can't control what everyone else looks like, but how you talk about yourself and to yourself for the rest of this prep matters, because that'll be the deciding factor, especially in those last 4 weeks of prep. Whether you're getting on stage or not is how you're talking to yourself. I remember my first prep ever in Arnold Classic in Australia. I was 24 hours out from the show. I'd registered, I signed up, I'd done everything. We were in Melbourne. My coach was next to me. I said, I'm not doing it. I know for a fact, I regret it now if I didn't. But at the time, I was like, I'm too small. It's my first show. I'm not big enough to be up here. Like giants have stepped on this stage. This isn't like but I got out of my head, listened to my coach, had that conversation. I'm like, you've done the work. It's done. Why would you throw this all away now and give in to that voice that doesn't want you to do this, just wants you to quit because it's hard? Control that self-talk, change the narrative, reframe it. I'm doing something I never thought possible. I'm stepping on the Arnold Classic stage in Australia. How is that not a positive? I teach that same thing to my clients. And like those last 4 weeks, man, if you're in your head, not speaking, if you're not controlling self-talk, as a skill. And this is again where psychology is so important in preps, in platforms, in strongman, like where it's not always viewed the same way. It's not viewed like other sports where they have performance coaches. But if you talk to yourself in the wrong way in the back end of a prep, you don't get on stage.
Yeah. Well, if you get lean enough, your brain's not going to work right anyhow.
Exactly.
So when we move into one of your next pillars, which would be fulfillment, how do you define that? How do you build that?
This is the craziest part about it is I can't define fulfillment for someone. Each person individually has to define what fulfillment is for them in a way that means something. Fulfillment isn't happiness. Fulfillment isn't a positive emotion. It's not, I'm sitting here and, I just won the lottery, I'm fulfilled. Fulfillment is a deeper philosophical, emotional reflection on not only a present, but a past. And it's something that you have to be able to, it's in essence a degree of delayed gratification, because you can't know that you're going to feel fulfilled at the end. You can't know that you're going to get to the end and feel that. But at the same time, are the things that you are doing every single day having that profound impact in your life where you know that I am doing something meaningful, that I'm doing something greater than myself in a way that I see making an impact to those around me in a positive way. And that to a degree, if you could do this without being paid and every bill is covered, could you do this thing without being paid or given a dime? You just got the opportunity to do it and live rent-free, bill-free, and everything was covered. If debt or tax wasn't an issue, could you do this thing? And you cover those approaches, there is a very high chance that you are going to feel fulfilled in what you do. The problem is, a lot of people put those superficial factors first and then try and say, I want to feel happiness, or I want to feel this emotion of some degree. Happiness is never going to be a destination. You can't sustain happiness. Like, my dad dies. Am I supposed to feel happy? Is my life bad if I don't feel happy? I get hit by a car. Am I supposed to feel happy? Am I supposed to feel a certain emotion? What happens if I don't? They're things that I can't control, but people put this idea that, we're supposed to feel happiness, we're supposed to feel joy. Fulfillment is none of those things, but it's all of those things. And that makes, when I try to teach that to clients or I try to get them to understand, like, at the end of the day, are you living in accordance with who you are as a person, the things that you're trying to achieve, the difference you're trying to make? Are you working towards these things in spite of what might be, a $1 billion job? Or, a really extreme example I give people is like, you can make $1 billion, but if you're someone who believes in giving back to the earth and you're very deep on Mother Nature and you work for an oil company, chances are, you got the money, but you're not fulfilled. And so are we doing today what is going to make us feel fulfilled in each day, but also in the future? And that's something like just getting people to grasp that it's not about happiness. It's not about, joy or pleasure. Those things will come and go. But how do you work and live towards a life that is going to have you feel fulfilled in the moment and in the future? That's something like, it's hard to teach, but it's one of my biggest beliefs, that more people need to live towards a fulfilled life rather than a happy life or towards a pleasurable life. And if I can do that with my clients, if I can have them experience that with coaching, and I'd give every dollar away. I'd do it for free if I could. That's how I know I'm fulfilled in what I'm doing.
Yeah, but that becomes tricky if you're trying to teach somebody else that.
Yes, it is.
Right. So it's them. So you're navigating that through conversation. Because, a lot of these words like fulfillment, like, what does that mean? You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, that can mean one thing to you. It can mean one thing to me. It can mean one thing in a textbook.
Yes.
It's another one of those concepts that need to be anchored. Mm-hmm. So how would you go about anchoring that, with that client so the conversation can be had in the first place?
This is a hard one.
Here's why I ask, right? Mm-hmm. Because somebody that's a high achiever is always, living in this fucking chaos, like
Mhm.
go, right? And you're going to ask, you know, are you fulfilled? It's like, fuck no, I'm not fulfilled. I got all this other kind of shit to do. But meanwhile, yes, they are.
Yes.
Because that is their
That's their
fulfillment.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you got to be able to anchor that to be able to have that conversation, because it may not be that.
Yes.
You know, they may, all that driving and pushing and all that they were doing may all just be reactive.
Yes.
Because of shit they're fucking up all over the
Yeah.
place. Instead of proactive. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I do. It's a hard question. It's a question that has to be defined. And I think a big thing for us is, you know, we use I believe it's called Ikigai, and it's a Japanese concept of trying to find purpose. And a lot of the time, if I can have someone establish their purpose, there is some tangible skills that tangible concepts they apply to it. What value do you give to the world? What is a skill set that you have? What are you interested in that you get paid for? What would you be happy to do for free? And essentially with these rings, you can look at combining them, and somewhere in there is usually a purpose. And again, this is where, you know, the skills kind of build on from each other to a degree. Is if I can have someone map their purpose, and it's hard, it takes a lot of time, but if I can have someone map their purpose, that then anchors the fulfillment, because now you're living towards something that is most likely bigger than yourself. And it might be my purpose as simple as, you know, the blue collar man who works for his family, wants to make sure that his kids have a life he never had, that, you know, he doesn't want to have the abusive father, the alcoholic father, you know, having to slave 3 jobs on minimum wage. So we're going to help you get to college. That's a purpose. That man has a purpose in his life to do something greater than himself. And so when we use these sort of rings, I guess, as they kind of define it, and we can map that out, I can stack that exercise with clients that really struggle to grasp it. Then we anchor that fulfillment towards that purpose. So yeah, it gets tricky because now we're adding subjective concepts each time we add them to each other. But generally, if someone has a purpose that they're working on, and usually I'll push someone to have a purpose that's bigger than, you know, I want to make $1 million, or, you know, I want to get a pro card. What is it about this that is bigger than you that you are going to use this for, or that you feel connected to it about? Well, I want to make $1 million because, you know, I'm big on giving back to charity. I want to provide a school for kids to learn a football program, and, you know, get schedules to scholarships to universities, and have a life I never had. Okay, that becomes purpose. Now, everything you do, it's not always going to feel good. It's not always going to feel great. It's not always going to feel happy. It's not always going to feel positive. But you wake up every single day towards making that purpose happen. That's fulfillment. You can look at that and go, I'm pretty fulfilled in the life I have, because at the end of the day, every decision I'm making and thing that I'm doing is putting something together that's going to help kids reach university that otherwise never would. You combine those 2 factors, and now you've got something real. And yeah, it's hard because you start looking at an intangible topic, or an undefined subjective word, I guess. But if we can have something in place like that, we're anchoring that fulfillment to the purpose. That purpose comes from X, Y, Z, you know, explorations and conversations. Then it's something different.
Well, I think that, you know, what you touched on there, and I think what we're hearing is rain. You know, it's on the tin roof. So I think that's what, if people are wondering, like, what's going on? Just like, it's the rain. Are you looking to boost recovery, enhance your sex drive, and improve performance in the gym? Do you think your hormones are out of whack and you're tired of getting the runaround from your doctor? You know, things like your hormones are just fine, stop lifting heavy weights, etc., etc., etc. I know what that feels like, as I've been down that road most of my life. This is why we've partnered with Marek Health. Marek Health is a premium telehealth platform that specializes in hormone optimization and preventative medicine, ensuring a better quality of life. Marek Health offers a table talk panel tailored for our listeners, featuring comprehensive tests like total and free testosterone, sensitive estradiol, and advanced markers like lipoprotein A and IGF-1. These comprehensive panels of up to 84 carefully selected biomarkers allow you to identify areas of enhancement and maximize your physical, cognitive, and sexual performance. It's much different than the panels you may get from your doctor. Choose between self-service options where you can select lab panels based upon decades of experience, or opt for guided optimization with your own health coach. Start with a detailed breakdown of your labs and receive personalized treatment options, both over the counter and prescription. Visit marekhealth.com/tabletalk and use the code TABLETALK to get 10% off your first order. Marek Health isn't just about better health, it's about empowering you to take control of your well-being. I've spent most of my life training in unconditioned gyms, and I know most of you that are training in garage gyms, private gyms, black iron gyms, know what I'm talking about when I say the heat sucks. It kills your motivation to go to the gym, it kills your performance, but it doesn't have to if you keep your electrolytes up. That's why today's episode is sponsored by Element. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink with everything you need and nothing you don't. This means lots of salt with none of the junk. No sugar, no colors, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, no BS. It contains an electrolyte ratio of 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. Element can help prevent and eliminate headaches, muscle cramps, fatigue, brain fog, sleeplessness, and other common symptoms associated with electrolyte deficiency. Right now, Element is offering a free sample pack with any drink mix purchase. Get yours at drinkelement.com. This deal is only available through the Table Talk link.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Are we done selling this?
I'm done. All right. Guys, this is the new elitefts.com box squat box. It weighs 73 pounds, I'm told.
It weighs 3 pounds.
You've got your story, I've got mine. He says 3, I say 73. This is absolutely amazing, guys, no joke. You can box squat on this. I'm gonna box squat it tomorrow. This sucker is strong, ridiculously strong, and it is light, guys, no joke. You can carry this anywhere, put this in your gym. Anybody can use this. It's extremely affordable as well. I really can't believe it. So I'm sure they're gonna tell you all the details down below or the side or somewhere, but this thing is absolutely amazing. 73 pounds, guys, 73 pounds.
With that, but with the purpose that you're talking about here, my belief is that it's vital that people take the time to try to explore that and try to figure that out, because we're tribal in nature.
Yes.
And if we don't, somebody else is going to define it for you, right?
Yes.
You know, and that's how people become part of,
Miserable.
you know, cults or, you know, political parties or whatever they want to fill in the gap with.
Yes.
Somebody will do that, right? And
especially in America.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere, right? So if, and religion can fill that. I mean, there's a lot of different things that can kind of fill that. But if there's nothing there,
yes,
and that's kind of my point. If there's nothing there, there will be, and it won't be your choice.
Yes,
but you'll think it's your choice.
Yes,
right? Because you've done been brainwashed.
Yep.
You know, or whatever it is, because people tribally just kind of want to gravitate towards those things.
Us versus them.
Yes, I need to use the restroom real quick. Then we'll be back. So that's going to piggyback on your next pillar, which would be passion development, which passion becomes another one of those words like the fulfillment and purpose and all the other stuff. So how do you navigate that one? And how do you define that one, or anchor that one? It's better.
Anchoring that one, I think, stems back to that question: what would you do for free for the rest of your life if all bills were covered? Like, generally, underneath that question is the utmost passion. Like, you're doing something that you could do and never make a dime. Like, for me, if everything was covered, every bill, every expense was taken care of, and we lived in that sort of like utopian economy, I'd coach. I would coach with these psychological approaches and, you know, the difference that I bring to the game. I would coach and try and impact individuals, because I genuinely believe that I am excited every single day to wake up and do what I want to do. And so if I can get people to understand that, or at least answer that question, is there something that you would give up earning money for if money wasn't required? Could you do this for free for the rest of your life? It's like most of the time we look at people like, you know what, I really love sales, or I really love business, or I love, you know, I'm a lawyer. It's because there's a value attached to it. There's a contract, there's X amount of money or social status, what have you. But would you do it free for the rest of your life? Would this be something that you would give up and do over anything else? That's passion. Like that sense of excitement, of bordering on obsession mixed with joy. Like that is passion. And you know, some people, that we attach a dollar value to it. And that's a big thing for me. It's like I try to get people to try and work towards getting paid for the thing they love to do. And for me, I'm lucky, like for us as what we do, like coaches, the right coaches, we're getting paid to coach. We're getting paid to do the thing we love doing. Yes, there's coaches in the game that are just trying to make a quick buck and, you know, screw people over. But for the better part, I may be naively wishful thinking, but the good coaches, we've found our craft. We found our thing that we're passionate about, and that's helping other people get better, shortchange the gap from A to B for people who might otherwise have not got there and have that impact. I would do that for free. I would wake up and do that every single day of the week for free and just try and get better at it. And I think if like, not everyone's going to have the same passions. Not everyone's going to have the same level of passion towards those things, but can I get you passionate about the thing you were doing?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to throw a curveball at you, but then I'll make a point after that to where if you were to do this for free, right, and you love what you're doing and you have, passion to be able to do that, and it was for free, right, then at that point, a good percentage of the clients that you work with right now, you wouldn't work with.
Oh yeah.
Right. All the administrative stuff that you have to deal with, you wouldn't have to deal with. You know, all the financial stuff that you'd have to deal with would be eliminated because of that. You wouldn't have to deal with doing podcasts and traveling and trying to get your name out and networking. You wouldn't have to deal with, you know, a whole host of other things. So it's not really that we love what we do. It's that we love what we do enough that the negative that comes with that is 49% compared to 51%, or at times maybe the negative's 80%, but the 20%, you know, it kind of like on this sliding scale that kind of plays around with all that. And when you can get that percentage in that 50, you know, 60 in that range, right, that you find happiness and all these other words that are really hard to define, but to where you find fulfillment, all these other things that we're talking about, then that's good, right? The utopia that gets created is people think they're going to love it all the time.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And what also comes from that is I personally know a lot of people that have jobs to where 90% of what they do, they can't stand. Right. But the 10% they love, which makes it worth that 90%. I also know people that basically can't stand their job 100% of the time, but that doesn't matter to them because their main purpose is their family and the time they have with their family, and they love their family, and that allows them to be able to provide for the purpose of that family to be. So the purpose, you know, is kind of shifted with all that. So when that narrative goes along of, you know, find what you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life is bullshit, you know, and, you know, so I agree with what you're saying, but I think when the narrative comes out on that a little bit, there's some things that kind of get lost into that. And anybody that, you know, is an entrepreneur or has had a business or even it is a gig worker or whatever it is, relates exactly to what I'm talking about here. Because there's a lot of things that have to be done to be able to give that fulfillment on the things that are there. Now that for those people that are 90-10, that 10% fulfillment, that's massive fulfillment, you know, for the 90% that they put in, and it may not happen for years, you know, but they know, and that's what they're striving for. Oddly enough, that striving for is also that fulfillment without them really knowing what that is. Right. So it's an interesting thing, you know, to when they think critically, you know, instead of superficially, and like just kind of dig into like what is really going on, you know, what is all this, and then look at it. but also having the transparency enough to the people that may want to come into the space to be able to understand, you're seeing highlight reels.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And the highlight reels are not the full story.
Mm-hmm.
And if the full story was laid out, you probably wouldn't want to do it.
I just use me as an example. The first 5 clients that I prepped were all free. I was out of pocket to fly to their shows. I was out of pocket to pay for their posing. I was out of pocket to basically do the entire thing because I needed people to see that I not only love what I do and I was passionate about making a difference, but I was good at it and I could do it because that's how we got out there. Like that's how I started getting clients to see. It's one thing to say you can get people lean. It's another thing to say you can get people on stage. It's another thing to say you can get someone on a platform. I can get people strong. I'm not a platform coach. Like there's a big difference. Mm-hmm. So you need to be able to, show that you have the evidence, I guess, behind you. I didn't, how to word it.
Well, it also builds your confidence.
Exactly. And, all the, us coming over here, we've done a total of about 18 to 20,000 kilometers in travel just in this trip alone. I don't love travel, but I love the ability to be able to have conversations like this. I love the ability to be able to connect with people that I didn't dream of networking with, to be able to present at summits and workshops and be on stage telling people about what we do and how they can be better at it. I love that. I am beyond passionate about that. That stuff we literally do give away for free. You go to our website and I will bombard you with as much information as I possibly can about things just because I think that needs to be in the industry. But as you said, there's parts of it that if it was on highlight, you see the highlight reel, you don't see the 17 hours sitting in coach, flying from Australia to America where the person next to us is ripping farts the whole flight. Like, you start to smell and the place just gets stuffy and you're cramped up. Like those are the parts where we sacrifice to make this happen. I love the net total, but there are parts, you're right. There are parts about it where it's like, if you were to see this laid out, would you also want to do it? You might want to just be a standard coach in your demographic, in your zip code. That's cool. But there's still going to be parts about that you don't like. But are you passionate enough about the thing that you love, which might be coaching or getting those people results, getting those people a return on their investment? Are you passionate enough about that to, I guess, make the suck worth it?
The next segment that I have here, we kind of touched on a little bit, but we'll kind of dive a little bit deeper into it. And that would be the community aspect. Mm-hmm. So we kind of talked about the online and then the in-person. Mm-hmm. So just go a little bit deeper on that.
Yeah. So anyone who's primarily an online coach knows how hard it is to connect people. Like I started in face-to-face coaching. I started coaching athletes. I started coaching team sports. Then I moved into like Gen Pop, gym face-to-face coaching. It's a lot easier to be able to have that tangible relationship with people, right? Like they pay to come see you. A lot of the time, really, for most PTs that would listen to this, they know that your client's paying 45 minutes to gossip and complain to you. You might get 3 or 4 good working sets for the average Gen Pop clients coming through the door. But one of the things that we found is online is it's hard to have that connection approach. We know when we look at the literature, we look at coaching theories, having people bond and bind together as a team in spite of their goal is one of the most powerful ways to build motivation because they're surrounded by what they call the holy.
Yep, thunder.
Yeah, that got me good. That relatedness is a fundamental pillar of motivation. It's in the literature of how we actually talk about motivational science. So how do we get people to have that? And one of the hardest things to do in the online space is have that network, have that connection, have that sense of similarity. Yes, you've got 20 or 30 different clients that are athletes or competitors or bodybuilders, whatever, but do they communicate? Do they talk? Do they share interests? Are they together? Do they do things together? What about if they're in different states? Well, how are we building a sense of community to have everyone know that whilst your goal is unique, you're not alone? Because one of the biggest things that's isolating about bodybuilding, powerlifting, strength sports is on the day-to-day grind, you're pretty much by yourself. Yeah, the platform, you come in here and you get under the weight. There's usually, what I love about powerlifting is there's 10, 20 bigger guys than you screaming at you to get the weight up. In bodybuilding on stage day, you got your team, supporters, but for the majority of it, it's pretty hard going to be connected with people unless you have a training partner. So a lot of us by trait are naturally introverted. We're naturally isolated, we're naturally by ourselves. And so one of the things that we found that we wanted to be different about was, how do we have people commune? How do people come together? Because we have such a diversity of population. You know, we work with performance athletes, strength sport athletes, bodybuilders, Gen Pop. You know, like I mentioned before, the guy in the fighter pilot program, they're all quite unique. They're still in the pursuit of getting better at things. They're all quite unique. And so for a big thing for us was, how do we bring all of these individual people together and still feel like they're a part of something, especially in an online space where we don't all live in the same 5-10 minute demographic like your average PT at a gym. And so that was a big thing for us, was building. We do that through our app. We do that through our conversation pieces. We do that through WhatsApp. We do that through building our branding. So, you know, we ensure that if someone starts up with us, they get a free shirt. They're wearing our values. They get a free shirt on the back, and, you know, we wear that out of pocket. It's not included in the admin fee. It's not included in anything. That shirt means something to me. When I wear that shirt, when I wear my business shirt, I represent those values. I believe wholeheartedly in what they are. So if I'm giving it to you for free, I'm hoping you see that too. I'm hoping that you feel a part of that and you're connected to that. And the same thing, like when we're at shows, I limit myself to 3 to 5 clients per season, because I'm very hands-on in how I approach my prepping athletes. I'm very big on being there, being involved, handling the process. You know, I'm sure there'll be a time where I have that system down to a tier I can do more. But for me, it's like, I don't want to sacrifice the way I change or the way I impact their preps for numbers. So I'm very limited in how many people I work with. But a lot of the time we go to these state shows, the national show. I'm not the biggest coach there. I don't have the biggest audience there, but we're going to have one of the biggest crowds, because we're big on making sure that every single person in that group chat, in our group community, are feeling like they're being lifted up by everyone else. You know, we had one of my girls smash out a triathlon, never done a triathlon before. She felt she couldn't even share that. She's like, oh, it's not a bodybuilding goal. So, you know, whatever. I'm like, no, you put that in the team page, tell everyone. There was 20 comments going through our app, hyping this woman up about running a triathlon. And it was an arbitrary thing. Like, triathlon's just like a bodybuilding. She wasn't going to win, but she improved her time from the triathlon we did before. And the whole team just went nuts for her. And it was like the sense of excitement that she had, the motivation that she had from that was crazy. And in a space that's online, that's where I spend my time, I do the odd face-to-face session with a couple of my athletes. But majority are kind of out of the greater Brisbane region. So it's hard to get that, you know, they're not traveling 2 hours for a session, which is fine. So for us, it's like, when we do come together, how do we make that statement? How do we make everyone feel a part of something? Whether it's 10 people, 20 people, or it's 5 people. And that's something that we feel is missed a lot in the online coaching space, is making your team feel like they're a part of something more, and that they're not just another number on your book. It's very easy in coaching to go, well, I've got 70 clients. I'm like, no, I coach 40 people. I impact 30 athletes. I work with individuals. A lot of the time people are just like, yeah, I've got 100 people on my numbers, on my books. I don't see people or clients in the way where they're just a number. I think a lot of the times it's very easy to get caught up in like, how many numbers are on your books? How do you make that athlete or that individual feel different? How do you make them feel a part of something? That's our endeavor. It's like, I want you to feel a part of this team. Like, I come from a team sport. I know what it's like to be surrounded by other athletes that are getting after it. If you're the one that's slacking, guess what? The team holds you accountable. Mm-hmm. If you're stepping up, you're lifting other people with you. So at the same time, I want that for my team, Gen Pop or athlete.
Now, one thing that I've noticed just with podcast guests that's resonated and probably have always known, but it's not as exposed as to when you have multiple conversations with people over and over again, is when it's, you know, top bodybuilder, strongman, power, strength sports, top athlete, is when they first commit, like really commit. So they go from it like being a hobby to like, this is really what I want to do. And they're locked in all that. So the nutrition's not a problem. The training's not a problem. All these things are not a problem. Not going to weddings, all this, none of that's a problem. Right. And so they have this all in mentality, right? Which is interesting because your all in will be different than my all in, So, and a lot of people that I've met, and probably myself included, when I look at that all in and have been there at a very high degree and very high level, I'm not sure I ever want to do that with anything ever again. Right. So that's, you know, one first statement with that, because, but that's also a little short-sighted, because what I've realized is as people will evolve, you know, through these sports and business and other things as well, is what they think is all in, you know, at that point in time is generally only the things that they choose to be all in on.
Yes.
Right. So they're choosing to be all in on diet, da. So as they evolve and they get better and they start to get to a genetic ceiling or some point to where making progress past this point is really, really fucking hard.
Yep.
Right. Then they start to discover all these other things. Like sleep actually really matters way more than what it should. Social support matters way more than it actually should. You know, staying connected with the people that are in my circle instead of alienating them, like I got a show coming up, I can't do this thing, is actually more important than the alienation of all that.
Yes.
Because then that community, as you said, basically all these pillars then come in. So now they're on this other side to where now they really are all in.
Yes.
Right. And they're looking back, you know, thinking that wasn't all in. That was just conveniently all in.
Yeah.
Right. While this other end, it's not as convenient.
Yeah.
And it happened out of necessity because there's no other way.
Yes.
That they're going to be able to get any further than they currently already are.
Yes.
They only turned over the rocks that they really wanted to.
Yeah. The one that they knew.
Yeah. The ones that they knew and the ones that actually probably are the hardest.
Yes.
You know, and which is great. And it's part of that whole process where the trick would be, or the awesome thing would be if they could do all of that here.
Yes.
Right. Because
how to get that done sooner.
Yeah. Because normally by the time they get to that point, there's only a few years left.
It's back end of the career, yeah.
That's the back end of the career, right? Because they're the same thing in the NFL and anything else. Like a lot of these guys really don't start paying attention to their health, their training, and all these other things until it's like, oh shit, you know, I only have 4 more years left. I need this contract extension. That's now worth X millions of dollars. I need to be able to at least make it to get that contract extension, you know, compared to when they first came in. It's like, oh, fuck all that. So at this point, they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on training, recovery, nutrition, you know, mental techniques and all these other things, you know, because of that. But what if
we had that sooner
here?
Yes.
Right. And I think speculatively, that's the difference between, as we started, Colby, all these other people is that is here, or maybe it's not, and they just don't give a fuck.
Yes.
You know, about any of the others, which is detrimental.
Yes.
You know, but if they don't care, it's not detrimental.
Yes.
You know, so what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a fantastic point. Like you've kind of described why I believe I kind of exist in coaching. How can I get these lessons that people are learning in hindsight and get them to people before? Like that to me is a profound impact as a coach. If we can look at the lessons, you know, there's always lessons in success. There's always blueprints or footprints in success that we can take from, we can follow. But how do I get someone to that first without having to worry about it? And, you know, like I sort of touched on before, Chris Bumstead's now at the back end of his competitive career, arguably one of the greatest bodybuilders of all time inside his division, his category. But as a person, like the level of reach he has, who else? Arnie? Like that's really what we're seeing. And he's now in hindsight, the last couple of preps, a lot of his big, you know, winning ceremony conversations, his big on the stage conversation when he wins the Mr. Olympia is, you know, my first few preps, I regretted everything, or I wish things away. Sorry. You know, I just wanted it to be over. I wanted to get through it. I just wanted to grind through it. Now he's talking about being present, being mindful with it, enjoying it, embracing the good and the bad. If I can teach that to athletes before it gets to the back end of the career, that'd be insane. And then we add to the fact, like, you know, a big thing that we approach is our health metrics. So if I'm getting someone to bodybuild, I'm not waiting till blood pressure starts to show up and these issues start to show up where we're checking for health markers, liver and kidney function. I'm setting a baseline. We're doing these things first. So I need to know where your starting point is before we make any changes. I go through what I call my clients earning the right to go on supplementation. And, you know, for you guys, a big thing that I think is profound over here is you have Marek Health.
Yeah.
They are huge for that. Like, I love those guys because they have that focus, the education, but also the data that you get back, the blood panels they screen for. You go to a general practitioner, you might get 1 or 2, 3, like 3 things maybe. But for them, it's like such a a essential process that you get a complete blood panel and that everything is in place? Because it matters. Why wait till, the liver and kidney enzymes start to play up before your heart starts to function incorrectly that you start to go, I need to get these things checked. The thing that I do love and the thing that I'm big on is building those, what we call lowest hanging fruits first, the health factors, the cardio factors, the sleep factors, the nutrition factors before it's a hindsight catch-22. I wish I had done this sooner approach. Knowing that there are athletes like that, I'm looking at those blocks and go, well, how can I build it over here first? How can I take those clients? Like, when I talked about the 2-year window, someone might stay with me to prep. Well, that's what we're learning in those 2 years. How many of these skills from the greats can I teach you before you get on stage so that we don't have to look back in hindsight? I know that you're going to love bodybuilding because we've done it properly. I know that you're in the best position because we've done it properly. You might not win gold the first day, but if we have those stepping stones in place and those systems, over time, it's almost inevitable. And even if it's not, so what? You've become an even better person and everything about your life is probably better. I look at one of my girls at the start of this year we have what's in Australia called season A and season B. We don't have it run as consistent as you guys do in America for competing. She was with me for 2 years, came through a whole list of mental and psychological disorders and issues. I told her we're not competing straight away. This is going to take time. Even to the point last year, we were in February. She was supposed to start competing in April and compete in October. I sat her down and said, we're not doing this. If I compete you right now, if I put you in prep, I will basically sign off killing you. And not in like the blood panel level or anything like that, but psychologically, this is going to ruin your life. And I'm not going to do that. You can risk going somewhere else, but I'm not going to do that. Took that time, built those skills. She goes, waits. She listened. She took it on board. She waited, got a pro card. First season ever competing, wins her national show as an amateur, goes on to the pro show, wins the pro show, and is now like an Australian natural champion. But we take that time, and especially for my guys that I know are going to use or that we're going to graduate towards using. I wish we had Marek over in Australia. We're starting to get brands now like Primal Zone, which are fantastic. We can screen a full comprehensive blood panel. I can teach you fundamental behaviors to make sure those blood panels are in check, even when we're prepping. We know that those skills, those things become not regretful in some athletes, but you look at the older generation or they look back and say, man, I wish I didn't let my blood pressure get to X. I wish I didn't let my liver and kidney enzymes get to Y. I wish that I was doing more cardio just because it's healthier. Okay, cool. Well, I know we have that tangible evidence from those guys. They've said it. Well, if we're coaches, we're using that education, that experience, isn't it our responsibility to then teach that to the guys coming up?
Yeah, well, there's short-term evidence as well, because if the blood markers are screwed up, your ability to recover is screwed up.
Oh, yeah.
So your ability to make gains is screwed up, right? So with Marek, and by the way, they're a sponsor, so link in the description, 10% off your first. I recommend it. Yeah, for 10% off your first order. You're able to get ahead of all that.
Yes.
And if they're going to use and you have it done before they use, you have benchmarks, right?
Baselines,
where,
we call it.
If they're blasting, and then you'll be able to see what's disrupted, but you still kind of don't have the benchmarks.
Yes.
And over a period of time, the more I've had my blood work done annually since 90 and then quarterly since the last 10 years, then there's the benchmarks are glaring and they're obvious. It's like, here's this, here's this. Then after a certain, here's why that, is happening. Here's the correction for that, to be able to kind of navigate with all that. And with the way that I've always operated and the way our panels on Marek are is there's, a total panel, which is once a year, which I just had done last week. And it took 3 jabs because it was 32 vials. I mean, it's huge. And then there's the quarterly, which is like, what's going to be fucked up, on this main panel. Something's always off. Like nothing's perfect. It's never always been perfect. But then them quarterlies are just kind of dialing in what was off, so then the cost goes down, for those other ones. So they're just the reoccurring type of things. The only one that really sucks for me is when it's the full panel, because you got to hope the person drawing knows what they're doing. And that's why actually it was four sticks. It's like somebody really good, is going to pull it out with one. And I almost got to the point to where wouldn't this be easier if you just did this like I was giving blood? And you just pull the whole damn thing and then put it in there, but it doesn't work that way. But anyhow, with all these topics that we've talked about, are there any topics that you wanted to discuss I didn't bring up?
one of the things I really am driving home at the moment is that sports like bodybuilding, sports like powerlifting, I don't know about you, but it's become almost like a trend where you go to a general box gym, you go to a general facility, just an average, whatever, box facility. The current trend, which is, I think, going back to your point on why we're seeing the numbers expand, the total distribution of the population get bigger for these sports, is there's a current reach where it's like, I've dropped 20 pounds, or my coach, I had a trainer at the gym, we did some 6-week challenge, I've dropped 20 pounds, my body fat came down a bit. And because that coach is trying to get known for coaching, or trying to get known for physique development or powerlifting or strength training, he wants to get a few clients. They're pushing, rather than using all these steps and conversations we've had today, they're pushing the goal on the client. And it's hard to talk about because it feels like I'm trying to gatekeep bodybuilding, I'm trying to gatekeep these performance sports. But the approach is that we're putting people into a position for competing that aren't ready to compete. They're not athletes. They're just not that way inclined. They're not that type of person. But you've had everyone blowing smoke up them where, hey, you're going to look amazing if you do this. Like, you look the best you've ever seen. You should do this sport. You'd be great on a physique stage. Unfortunately, that coach is probably just trying to get clients to get, some notoriety and attention. And that's one of the things that, as much as I love bodybuilding, I find myself having this conversation quite a bit, that we need to look at how we're getting people on stage and why we're getting them on stage. Do they actually suit being an athlete? Are they actually that way inclined where this is going to be beneficial to their life, where it's going to be something that pushes them? They can handle critical feedback. They can handle objectively being told they suck and where they need to improve? Or is it we're setting them up for something that's going to ruin their life? They're going to build eating disorders. They're going to build body image issues. They're going to build binge eating problems. They're going to damage themselves under a heavy load because they're just not built up to it. I think that's just one thing that I'm finding myself having a conversation that I wish happened more, is that our entire conversation here happened for more clients because we actually try to get the crux of why they're competing, why they're trying to do this thing. Because in sports growing up for me, not everyone was an athlete. You weren't just an athlete because a lot of the time people spent a lot of time trying to become great athletes. They were that way inclined as individuals. Now in these sports, it's kind of just like, it happens a lot in Australia is, well, you lost some weights in bodybuild. Oh, you did a cool lift. Like, you pulled off improved some bench press. Let's go do a max 1RM, get you onto a platform in front of people and give it your best shot. But that person hasn't built the resilience, the mental fortitude, the skills, the goals, the why that make it deeper and will probably protect them. And then we end up with a lot of finger blaming about bodybuilding caused this, these eating disorders, powerlifting caused this, I've got these niggles and injuries. You just weren't prepared for it. You probably shouldn't have been there.
Well, another poor outcome of that is they may just quit training altogether.
Yes, which I hate.
Which I think that's probably more likely than all the other scenarios that you listed. Is, they found training for some reason.
Yes.
Right. And that's probably the underlining goal of what they have. That if you haven't diagnosed that, then you're pushing them to some other thing. And then they get disconnected from why they're there in the first place. And it's like, I don't want to be a part of this. And now they're never going to train again. Yeah,
they're not coming back.
Which is very bad.
Arguably worse.
Very bad, because it's hard enough, because on the other end of the spectrum is trying to get the people that were all in and that were all committed. And, and I've only trained for these competition sports platforms.
Yeah, we'd love to have more of those clients.
Right. Yeah, we'd love to have all those clients. But on the other side of that is someday they're going to be done.
Yeah.
And they may never train again either, because everything that they've trained for
is over,
has been disconnected, and they lost the reason why they started in the first place.
Yes.
Right. So I think from what you're saying here is, even with those athletes that you're working with, you're connecting them back to why they started in the first place, which is going to make their exit easier, because it isn't their identity as they think it is.
Yes.
Right. But it can very quickly become that when you're doing it for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
Right. Because you can lose focus of that.
And I would love if more people understood that these sports can make your life, but they shouldn't define it. Like, for the most people that are going to compete, that are going to go into bodybuilding, they're not going to be Nick Walker. They're not going to be Derek Lunsford. They're not going to be Ronnie Coleman. So the idea that this is everything about you, and the second that you lose or the first time you get it taken away from you, like that's it, your life is over, you're depressed, you want to end everything. It's important to understand that the likelihood of you going pro is very slim. Now, I'm a big believer in pushing towards those near impossible goals. There's a great book, The Art of Impossible, which defines capital I and lower I goals as impossible. Capital I being that I'm not going to suddenly turn African American and be 7 foot tall and play basketball. It's just not going to happen. So I'm probably not going to make the NBA. A lower I impossible goal is just something we define as like that's hard. Bodybuilding, that's hard. That's an impossible goal, but it's not capital I impossible. But at the same time, I don't want it to be every single thing about my clients. My clients are great people. My athletes are great people. Their relationships are sound. Their careers are sound. Like I said at the start, if my clients leave me, and sure, they want a plastic trophy, they want a pro card, they want whatever they want, but life has been completely destroyed because of it, I would quit. I have failed. Objectively, I have failed as a coach. Because if we rush this entire process to get you on stage faster and everything is ruined around you besides going pro, that's not winning. What do you get from a pro card really? Like the chance to compete more, sure, but how many people are actually going to make money from bodybuilding? How many people are going to make a career out of bodybuilding for life? How many people are going to build their relationships from bodybuilding? Not many, arguably. So for me, make sure that it's actually what you want to do and you're doing it for you, not because some coach has said, hey, you lost 20 pounds, you look great in a posing bikini. It just opens up so many problems. And then on top of that, like you said, you finally got someone who, my guy was 35% body fat, 40% body fat, and I've got him to stage, but he loves it. If I had got him to a point where, because we actually started with him wanting to do just that. He wanted to just improve his physique, feel comfortable with the light off, look good naked and see how good his physique could be. And then the more he fell in love with it, now that passion came, that purpose came, that excitement, he wanted to push himself, and now we're teetering on his first ever prep. But if I had pushed him for the wrong reasons and it got from 40 or 35% body fat to 10, then I was like, hey, you know what? You should compete. And he hates it. Now he goes back to 40 to 50%. That is entirely my fault as a coach. And I've ruined that, and I've ruined what bodybuilding could be because I've now tarnished it in someone's eye. I've now tarnished what coaching could be for someone, and I've now ruined training for someone's life. They will never touch weights again because I've done it for the wrong reasons. And that to me is one of the biggest insults we can have as coaches. One of the worst impacts we can have as coaches. It's negligible. But for some reason, we're just so quick, as much as I love, it's a hard thing because I'm arguing against the very thing that I've come here talking about can be so powerful, is that you actually have to take time to make sure you're ready to do it. Use these things from this conversation to say that you're ready to do it. The goal sheet that I've talked about, you can download from our website because I just want it to be free. I want you to get it. And is this actually my goal? What does my life look like in 5 years' time? Listen to these conversations. And then when your coach is like, you know what, I think you should compete. Well, what do you think? Should you actually get on stage? Should you actually get on a platform? I don't want to talk down the numbers of bodybuilding and stop it from growing, but I want to make sure it's growing for the right reasons. Not because everyone all of a sudden wants a social media presence that bodybuilding can give them, and they're going to get some photos for content, and their mum and dad and uncles, aunties said that they were the best looking person up there. Because the minute that 2-minute spotlight's over, which whether it's on a platform, whether it's on a bodybuilding stage, it's very limited time. Coming from sporting backgrounds where we played every week to now you're competing once every 2 years, and for arguably 2 to 5 minutes total. I don't want you to hate. I want you to be as present as possible and enjoy every single minute of it. Because if you don't, it's going to open you up to hating it. And then all of a sudden you hate me, and you hate training. You hate coaches. You hate the idea of what physique development can do, of what strength training can do. That to me is a loss. That's an absolute loss as a coach.
Well, it's a great message that you're spreading, so keep doing it, and at higher levels, and how can people get a hold of you? What's the best way for them to reach you?
So the best 3 ways to get a hold of us is our website, matterathletica.com. All the free content is there. All the stuff there is to explore and download. I don't gatekeep or ask for money for most of it. Our YouTube page is look up Matter Athletica. You'll see me. There's training content, information content. We record our preps so that I can show you behind the scenes what it looks like to work with us. Again, free. Or you can find my Instagram at Ben Mayfield-Smith. _ Ben Mayfield-Smith. And you'll find us there with as much information I can give away as possible. The amount that I give versus what we try and charge, I'm a big believer in giving as much as possible and just giving away. So finding any of those things to try and connect with and listen to or take on board, that's all I hope for.
All right. Well, thank you for coming out. And with that, we're done.
I appreciate you having me.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching the video to the end. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and click here, or here for more videos.